Sounds good. All right, well, let's go ahead and kick things off. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the mid-season Overwatch League Podcasters panel. My name is TOTEMLYDRUNK, and I'm an Overwatch podcaster / content creator for a variety of different podcasts out there. Heroes Never Die, Overwatch League Network, Overwatch Recall, OWL, By the Numbers. Before we get into the thick of things tonight, I just want to take a moment to thank everyone who is hanging out with us tonight on Twitch for our live show, and welcome our audio listeners, both old and new. So joining me tonight, we have several different Overwatch League podcaster colleagues of mine, some of who maybe you've listened to the game's earliest days. Some of you maybe have been listening to since the start of the Overwatch League. Others potentially for the very first time. So with me tonight, we have Ryan from the Birdwatchers, Adam from the Broverwatch, HOWLEIR from Casual OWL Fans, EDANAR from Heroes Never Die, DEATHBLOW from High Noon, Rob from OMNIC Lab, Kel from Overtakes, MELARINA from Overwatch League Recap, and Ramses from Push the Point. So why don't we quickly go around and give a little insight on the work that we do within the Overwatch podcast scene. So Ryan, let's go ahead and start with you.
Starting with me. I'm one of the hosts of the Birdwatchers, and we focus on some game analysis week to week, as well as keeping track of scores and standings. We try to keep it simple, and we hit that sweet spot between, beginner players and intermediate to try to get people to understand why what's happening on the screen is awesome and why you should be cheering.
Absolutely, and of course, you guys are proud representatives of ATL.
Oh yeah, of course. Let's go ahead.
Can't forget that. So I'm just going to keep this simple. I'll just go alphabetical order based on the podcast. So let's deflect this over to Adam from the Broverwatch.
Sure. I'm Adam. I am one of the co-hosts of the Broverwatch podcast, along with my friend Calder Amos Wood. We have a website where we haven't posted articles recently because we're trying to figure out some revamping kind of stuff. But on our podcast, we pretty much talk about game analysis, kind of talking about the plays and games of the week, the teams to focus on, whether that be a good thing or a bad thing. And other hot button topics, like this past episode, we talked about the difference in quality of the Overwatch League merchandise. So the topics vary from week to week. So
sad times.
Yeah, it's not looking good. But
what quality?
Exactly. So yeah, we look at every topic among the Overwatch League, and it's just a general discussion-based podcast.
All right, so not only do we have an Atlanta representative, we also have one for the Florida Mayhem of all teams.
The only one. The one fan. I'm here. I made it. So I'm HOWLEIR. I'm with Cowl Fans. We're a Florida-based podcast. We do talk a fair bit about Florida because if we didn't, no one would. But otherwise, we do try to talk about the entire happenings in the Overwatch League, more for a casual fans perspective. So we try to go a little bit more in depth with the analysis, but also try to keep things at a level most people would understand. And then we look back at games and good moments from weeks prior. So if you're someone who doesn't have time on the weekends to watch, maybe what's a good VOD to go back and see, and then try to let you know if you can only watch one game a day, like what's going to be a good game coming up the following week.
So, despite what one of my co-hosts might want to believe, this is not actually a birthday gathering, Ed, so I hate to break the news to you here.
100% not.
Yeah, this
is
is not,
Ed celebration.
Not a surprise. No.
Dang it.
Not quite. But, we do have my co-host from Heroes Never Die here. So, Ed, what do you tell everyone about the 3-hour megasodes that we typically do?
Yeah, no, I'm apologizing now for the episode running long, because it's going.
That's all the time you have.
Yes,
sorry.
No, we do Heroes Never Die. It's a variety podcast where we talk literally about everything that happens, from merchandise to Overwatch League to some contender stuff to just general Overwatch news, and then we also do fantasy Overwatch League, where I am a fantasy god. I'm just gonna leave it at that, and then just continue on.
I'm pulling it up right now. You know what?
He's first.
As the
first in the last stage.
Current unlimited Stage 2 champion.
Last time I
I
checked, though,
can say I'm a god.
didn't Totem and I beat you? Or are we currently beating
You
you?
beat me on with the team that I took with Bob.
No, we're talking
And
about
when I say I took the team with Bob, Bob screamed out Gaguri's name and took her without even talking to me.
Also, didn't I beat you just like a week and a half ago, if I remember correctly?
You beat me because Overwatch League sucks.
Dude,
and I'm
this is
still
some
in
kind of
first
god
place.
we're talking about here.
he's untouchable. But anyway, so yes, we have the fantasy god over here, but we also have two of the Overwatch podcast OGs from two different backgrounds really when it comes to the game in itself. So we have DEATHBLOW from High Noon, which is one of the longest standing Overwatch podcasts that is still going.
Yeah, I think we started when there was about 100 viewers watching the Gosu Gamers weeklies, and from that day going forward, we've had entirely an esports and competitive scene focus on that show. So obviously it was nice the Overwatch League came along and formalized it for us, made it a little easier to track and follow. But I'm also a host of Foul Play, also the longest running fantasy Overwatch League podcast. I'm just throwing that out there. And a panelist on Around the Payload, which is another one of our shows. And apparently I'm also the man that needs to knock EDANAR down a peg or two, because I thought I had a big head. But
No, you won't be
this
able
is
to
out
knock
of
me
control.
down.
This is out of control.
Well, I mean, to be
guys.
fair, Death, you had a much bigger head when Ramses wasn't in here, and you were the guy right in the middle. So we're level-headed at this point.
Figuratively, once upon a time, yes.
So we are also joined by Rob from OMNIC Lab, another one of the long-standing Overwatch podcasts out there that focuses on kind of like the strategy aspect of the game and features a lot of top 500 players and deep dives, map strategies, all of that good stuff.
Yeah, glad to be here. Like most of you may not understand, but I am the only one here that's on the other end of the ocean that is trying to do content on a regular basis. I've been in Japan for about 3 years teaching English, but it's no short feat to even schedule, let alone maintain something in this time zone. But yeah, we do pretty much everything strategy. Basically, if it's in Overwatch, we try to talk about it, whether it's Overwatch League, whether it's Ranked Ladder, whether it's anything that you can garner from something like Workshop. We're trying to do our best there. And then we've been diving over the last, I'd say probably the last 6 months, we've been almost re-gearing to kind of spread wide a lot of the topics that we can discuss. So we talk about like personal growth, talk about mental game, we talk about, we started covering some map guides and mix and matching, and then we returned to our roots to start off our 4th year of the show with Yeetle that will be going up in the next couple days, talking about Wrecking Ball.
Yeah, and congrats on episode 150, which I know you guys recently just recorded, with a couple of
thank you.
co-hosts from your Overwatch League podcast as well, one of whom is present right now. So next up, we have Kel from Overtakes.
Yeah, we have more of a sports perspective with our show. We started because we're both big sports fans. I do the show with Misfit. We both work together, and we talked about sports all the time, and we ended up both getting into Overwatch League and started talking about it. And as soon as it started, we're like, let's just do a podcast. We've been talking about doing it, so let's just do it. And we built up a pretty decent base on YouTube. We're starting to build up some good podcast content as well. But yeah, we kind of go at it more from like a casual sports fan perspective.
Absolutely. So next up, we have MELARINA from Overwatch League Recap. And Mel, I know pre-show was like, at least you don't have to worry about, getting skipped over in the Q&A this time. So you have that going for you tonight, so.
Did I get skipped over last time?
We can just not let her answer.
What? Stop it. DEATHBLOW.
I'm game.
Wow. Hi. Yeah, Ed. Take a seat, please. I'm Mel. I'm from Mel Recap. Like Totem just said, we cover Overwatch League every week and talk about a lot of stuff. And we usually have a different guest on every week. So last week we had Frito on. It's a lot of fun. Talked about the 222 lock that then got,
We'll get into that.
side. But yeah, we have a lot of fun, Andres and Bob are with me.
Shout out
unfortunately,
the team.
but
Shout out the team.
the team?
Yeah, your team. Shout it out.
Oh, Houston. 100%. Outlaws fan.
Wah, wah.
Somebody just professed to be a Florida fan. What are we even doing?
As
Give me crap.
as another Outlaws fan, it is debatable which one is worse at this point.
At least we're being subjective.
At least among the four of us, I think we technically have the majority in the panel.
It's true.
That doesn't mean you have the loudest voice in the panel.
And,
So.
and technically, everyone
I
else
can have the loudest voice.
has more
Also-
wins.
You can't hear
You
Ed
just don't
right now
control
because
the
I
volume
know
in
talking.
the recording. That's all there is.
All right, and last but not least, we have my fantasy Overwatch League partner, as we've been crushing EDANAR and Blaze Bob, that being Ramses from Push the Point.
What's up? Happy to be here. Happy to hang out with everybody for another week because I've been looking forward to this for a couple weeks now. But yeah, Push the Point is a Overwatch League podcast, as I'm sure you're assuming you're going to hear from everybody else at this point. But it's me and my co-host Labosco, who is a Open Division and former Pacific Division contenders caster. So we really break down kind of more of a discussion back and forth as far as league storylines, what's happening with certain players, what to look forward to in the meta, and then also comparing it similar to how Kel was saying, with more of like a casual sports fan perspective, really seeing how stuff evolves and moves throughout the season.
All right, so let's go ahead and jump into tonight's agenda. So we recently just wrapped up the All-Star festivities. I was going to say weekend, but it technically wasn't on the weekend like it was the prior year.
Yeah.
But we did see the Atlantic All-Stars defeat the Pacific All-Stars 4-1 in the All-Star game. And of course, we had some pretty memorable moments throughout the 2 days. Maybe none greater than the Burrito Maker challenging London Spitfire's gesture in a Widowmaker 1v1. Now, I have to say, like, personally, the formatting of the All-Star festivities still leaves quite a bit to be desired. And the arcade modes that we've gotten have been kind of middle of the ground. There's a lot of room for improvement there as well. And we have seen over the last several weeks a pretty big uptick in regards to activity on the public Telstra realm due to the game's newest feature, that of course being the workshop, which is set to go live on Tuesday's patch along with the anniversary event. And, you know, the workshop has really given the player base this ability to kind of create new game modes through scripting, and looking ahead, you know, this is a prime opportunity for them to maybe shake things up when it comes to these arcade modes, where maybe we can get some of the workshop modes like Gun Game probably being a primary example, as that involves a lot of different heroes, and of course it would be deathmatch based. Do you guys think we're going to enter a situation where these arcade modes are just going to get phased out in favor of maybe fan created content moving forward?
I think there was an obvious trend in the arcade mode where we saw no tanks. And I think that was on purpose and enjoyable, right? Like, I don't think that you can... I mean, I think the All-Star game is what the All-Star game is, right? Do you look forward to the Pro Bowl and football? Not really. Right? Like, it's cool to get in, okay, but I'm not going to watch it. Nobody's playing for their hearts, you know? And with a game that's so focused on communication, like, how are you going to put 6 people from 6 different teams and be like, these are the best of the best, let's see them just crush people?
Well, it's
no.
usually 6 people from 2 different teams.
Yeah.
How it breaks down.
All
Or 5
NYXL
people
plus
from one
profit.
team and 1 person from another team.
It did not help NYXL. I couldn't tell if they were sandbagging or just staying true to their narrative.
But to that point, you know, it is the case with like Pro Bowls. The same situation is where it gives you another excuse to kind of get together and watch it with a bunch of buddies. And usually people are drinking and doing other things while it's on in the background. That's essentially what we did, because we did have a watch party here, and everybody just was getting trashed as things were going on in the background. But when Bren went against gesture, everybody was paying attention. Yeah. So I think that moment in particular, I don't know, in my mind, I feel like it's a case where that event is more for the players, right? Because, you know, now they have a break, like a long break. I mean, it's almost been like a couple weeks for a lot of them, right? Like 2 or 3 weeks. But for them to kind of see it as
For all of our teams, at least.
Yeah, but it's not like all, business all the time. It's like, hey, you guys have this time to just mess around, have fun, play with each other, and have a good time. While people who are watching it may not be paying attention, but they're also having a good time. It keeps it as a game and keeps that light kind of feeling to the whole thing before we get back into competitive mode. And people are talking about burnout or whatever. But I think it's important for that reason. I think it's more important for the players than it is for the viewers, to be honest.
I would actually say that the players, depending on how the contracts are written, probably hate the All-Star game.
The players looked like they had way more fun
They
this
look like
year
they're having fun
than they did last year. Last year they looked bored. This year they looked like they were having a blast.
But think of it this way. If you're competing all along and you get voted into All-Star game, you're forced to stay there, forced to stay in LA for another week, where everyone who doesn't get in gets to leave, gets to go have fun, gets to go do other things. They don't have to participate in a lot of this. Now, that can be taken at, like, if they get incentives for making the All-Star game. Like, if they get, like, a bonus for playing, sure, that's awesome. But, like, imagine somebody who didn't make it. They got to go home for a week.
Yeah.
When everyone else was working, stuff like that. So
that's like saying, imagine the teams that didn't make the playoffs got a week extra off. Like, okay, good job. You suck. Go home. Like,
I mean, Florida basically has the rest of the season off at this point.
Well, I mean, like, for All-Star games, for no one in the NFL or even the MLB want to actually go to the Pro Bowl games or the All-Star game. And the NFL, they actually force NFL players, if you get voted in and you're out due to injury, they still force you to go to the Pro Bowl because they don't want you to fake an injury so you don't have to go to it.
Well, and the deal with the Pro Bowl would be because people would be more concerned about going and playing in the Pro Bowl and then still getting injured anyway.
Yeah,
I think it's a combination.
Watch the Pro Bowl.
Stupid dude. Martin Gramaticki freaking tore his ACL celebrating on a freaking bad kid.
Hey, what's wrong with that? But I guess okay to play bangs.
But I think it's a combination of both points. I think that the players really enjoyed it a lot more than last year's, where they really seemed like they were having a good time with it. But we did hear from a couple players that were like, no, like, I'm glad I didn't make All-Stars. I'd rather be home for a little bit.
Yeah.
Especially if it's midway through the season.
Yeah, I feel like
it's an interesting predicament. Like, to be honest, because when you're looking at it, it's in some ways it looks like a necessary evil because it's something that needs to happen for the sake of league growth overall. Because you're raising sales in merchandise, you're basically creating a new marketing ploy to get new things in and out of game with merch and with the skins. You also have them showcasing new possible features if they are there as a potential option. And with the workshops coming out, this is a great way to showcase this with pro play. In addition to that, the other thing is also true, which is the negative side of this, because then you have players that are doing so while they are taking a hit on individual identity for teams, where you might see individual player identity showcased with an all-star game and an all-star banner, and not necessarily their individual teams, but the individual teams doing, especially if they're stateside at the time, where they go home, they do a homestead like signing tour, or they go and see their parents, or they go see their family, depending on what ends up happening within the internals of what the team structures are planning for these weeks off. Then they're going to be taking a hit in that way. They're like, oh, great. We have all of the roster except for this entire line of all these people that want to have Muma's signature because he's playing in All-Stars. You know, you have this whole individualized thing for teams that takes a hit. And then you also have what EDANAR brought up, which is the individual players not getting rest, the Korean players and the Chinese players not being able to go home, especially the EU players for Paris. If they're not going to Paris and staying in the States, that's also a big thing. With these, especially these new rosters in Chengdu and Hangzhou and Guangzhou, if those players they don't get a break. You know what I mean? Like, these guys are Korean and they're going home, then they're not going to help their team market in the homestead areas that are actually not getting any attention in China or in Paris. And the last point would then be, it is like on kind of bringing it back up to a silver lining is this is much more low risk than something that you could say about Pro Bowl, for example, because we're talking about Pro Bowls as a thing. But again, that's where the esports and athletic avenues kind of split off, and you can't really make a one-to-one thing with regards to injury in this way. Yeah.
Carpal tunnel is a real thing.
I think
That's birdering.
I think one of the big things that
Or arc.
is like a big factor. Like this year, they're in the middle of the season, so they're not having to stay an extra month after the grand finals. I think that was a big reason why some of them look so miserable, because a lot of them had probably been home for a really long time, and then it's just like, oh, I have to go back to America for like a 2-day thing. It really doesn't matter, but here I am. So I think that kind of helped them not be as miserable this time. But I feel like it kind of compares more to the NBA as far as their All-Star break, because the day you really look forward to with NBA is you got the skills competition, you got 3-point shooting, you've got the dunk contest. Like that always is the bigger draw than the actual game, because the game is just literally who's going to jack up this three, and that's going to be it. Like, I'm going to shoot it from half court. Oh, I'm going to shoot it from even further. But with this, you kind of have like a little more variety. You get to see some of it, but yeah, you get the arcade McCree, which is just like, well, I got shot, so I'm going to go wait for this health pack to come back. That was like, it got borderline unwatchable at times. But like the Widowmaker 1v1 is super fun. And I think one thing that they've done that they need to work on too is they did a really good job of trying to get people involved, and similar to other ones where they're like, hey, fan vote, that brings in the players. But fan vote just always sucks, because then you get 3 Chengdu players like we got this year,
obviously,
in the starting lineup. And it's just like, okay, it's fine, but you had no one starting from the top 2 teams in the entire league in the starting lineup. It's just ridiculous. But I think one thing they can do to make that better is next year doing a fan vote of workshop things, like the different workshop modes that they can do. I think doing a fan vote for that would be the perfect way to get the community involved, but still make it fun and not stupid like that.
It decreases the prestige of being in All-Stars, right? Because you're fan voted and not peer voted, right? So it makes it so that it's not necessarily an honor to be in, but it's like, hey, you did a great job being cool and popular, right? Or people haven't seen you in a long time and they want to.
Well, I think the big issue with like Pine and things like that is that in the previous meta, when we were in the 2-2-2, there was an opportunity for individuals to stand out against their team. So you had these people like Jonak and Pine really rise amongst the average fans' perception of people in the league, where in GOATs, it's really hard to really pick out like individual players. So that's why you saw the people who were doing crazy stuff last season, Jonak, Poco, like these are Pine. These are all the guys who got into the All-Star game this time, because they had those big standouts. And I think that's why someone like Fusions got in. He actually was able to separate himself from his squad. He got in. I think it'll be better in a different meta next year, but I think they can maybe, at least they should like do some role locking. Like, this is a main tank, this is an off tank, 2 DPS, 2 support. So you don't just have 2 main tanks and 5 DPS on your team or something.
Would you call it like a 2-2-2, or what would you call it?
I would say 2-2-2, but I don't want 2 main tanks either. I think you should have a designated like off tank, main tank, flex.
So I think everybody kind of has the issues, and I kind of want to start talking solutions, right? And the first thing that comes to mind after listening to everyone is it feels like incentive is the thing, because you can say, hey, just don't be popular and you won't get voted in. But what if you had something like,
not being so good?
Yeah, what if you had something like the Dota Compendium, right? Where you said, okay, leading up to the All-Star event, if you're popular, whatever, as players play, as they buy skins or whatever, it dumps money into, you guys know how that works, right?
Yes.
With the Dota Compendium. If you had something like that, and out of nowhere, like the All-Star game is this huge-ass prize pool, and they can figure out how to divvy it up between, okay, the winner of the Widow 1v1 gets like, $3,000 or whatever. But I think that gives a little more incentive to say, okay, you're popular, people like you, you're good at what you do, you're in this specific arcade mode, show us what you got and have fun, because you can win a lot of fucking money, probably, right? Depending on how many people are involved. That also gives more incentive to the viewers to actually watch, right? Because with All-Star, you always get an average viewing. I think it was like 124 was around the average, which is below what you have for your standard games, right? So I think something like that may be a thing. I don't know.
I also think
if we want to talk about solutions, no, nothing personal, but let's not focus on a problem that doesn't exist. There's plenty of parts of my 9 to 5 I don't really like. Guess what? It's my job. I've got to do them. If you voted in the All-Star games, go. And it can be that easy. You've all got better jobs than we do anyways, so I don't have too much sympathy there. But I do like I think it's really worth talking about the selection process, because fan vote's always terrible. I like the idea of letting them decide game modes, but I want game modes, and whether or not Workshop really makes an impact on the All-Star game, to me, is completely up to the people that are developing the modes, because if they're not good, then they're not going to make it into the All-Star game. So let's focus on modes that do a good job showcasing the talent that the players have, that make them good at their role. I think the Widowmaker 1v1 is a perfect example of it. I don't think things like lockout elimination, making main tank players play McCree, I don't think that's the winning recipe in the end. I think we should do things like, your off tanks. What do they need to play Zarya? They need really good tracking. So let's come up with a good tracking drill that's really fun and has good visuals and is a fun spectating event. You can put your tracer players and your off tanks through it. That's sort of a thing. You can cross the disciplines between the different roles a little bit as well. And I think it'd be interesting to see how a really good Zarya off-tank player compares to a really good tracer player in the tracking department. Somebody like Gaguri, called out for hacking because of her ability to track. I think she would be right up there with players like SBB and Striker and people that are really good on tracers. So I think that would be a really fun way to approach it. And that's what I want to see more. I don't care about players that have been on the bench the whole time. To me, it's like disrespectful of the entire process and makes me less inclined to watch the event. And also, when Bren pops off on Widowmaker, can we force the Widowmaker 1v1 champion to have to beat Bren at the end of it? Because I think that I don't respect DM's title. I'm calling it right now. I don't think it's not legitimate. It's questionable to me. And unless he accepts all challengers, then, if it took gesture to accept it, come on. There was a champion. He didn't feel like his honor was questioned.
Right.
Apparently not.
Saya player, just saying. Where was Saya player in the 1v1?
Well, that's the other thing.
Players shouldn't be there.
That's the.
What did they do differently with the 1v1 this year than they did last year? Because last year it was boring. This year it was fun. And I think nobody's mentioned it, but the players being behind the people
that was it.
doing it.
I think that was it.
Epic, right? Like, we had Soccer Mom Ryuje Hong back in the back. We had Jonak, who, every time they got a shot was like the best facial expressions I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
And I think that was awesome, but I think they had to change something else, because not just that. Did they make it was it best of 10 before or something? I don't know.
Did they have fewer people?
It was Fierce to 7 too.
No, it was 8.
I feel like the pace was better, and that's what was different. They were just better at presenting it and keeping it moving and not letting us sit there with downtime. I know that was a big part of the problem in the preseason stuff that they were doing, is it was all kind of online and had to be put together, and so it just led to a ton of overtalk because it was so much harder to coordinate. And I think that's really what helped, is just they were better at doing it. They got better as a
I think they also focused a lot more on player reactions too. Last season, I felt like it was pretty much just full screen Widowmaker footage while the players were in the corners, but this time they spent a lot more time focusing on player reactions and player interactions. So that was probably most of it.
I think player fatigue was also something that popped up this year that we hadn't touched on at all, which was basically going from a power schedule that they would have in maybe a NHL, an NBA, or even a MLB setup, and they went to something more conducive like an EPL setup, English Premier League Soccer, or NBA, where the schedule got cut more than half for the players going into this. They actually are relaxed enough to go and have reactions. They're not deadpan. They're like, oh my god, this is another Overwatch game that I don't have to care about when I'm struggling to get these 4 games in this week. Something like that is not present anymore.
Yeah, and I feel like since they have more energy too, there's more, and I guess since they've already had a season, most of them, to play with each other, there's more room for, which we'll get into soon, more room for trash talk and stuff like that.
Sure.
I know trash talk is kind of or not a controversial topic, but some people like it, some people dislike it, but I feel like having emotion and having rivalries, even if there's no real rivalries in the Overwatch League, everybody loves each other. or well, I can't say that. I don't know
They
anyone.
all
But
Houston, Dallas.
but I mean
they
like
all live within like 5 feet of each other, right?
but I mean
So,
like Super and Bumper don't actually hate each other. They love and respect each other. But like that's a great rivalry, and like
I think the LA teams is pretty real, and I think
Yeah.
Houston, Dallas is pretty real as well. There's
Atlanta,
some
New York.
decent smack talk. New York
Philly,
and
New York
Boston is
last
one
year.
that we're missing that should be there, and I'm mad it's not.
the Atlanta New York one's pretty one-sided though. Let's be fair.
Dude, what are you gonna do, man?
It's like Atlanta hates New York, and New York barely like. It's like, oh, this is just like a mosquito.
yeah, that beat them twice.
Yeah, I feel like it's the other way around.
It's the mosquito that gave them malaria.
They're much more upset about choking in the playoffs than they are dropping back-to-back regular season games. I promise.
But
Yeah,
can
I
we
mean,
bring up the point
Make
that
the playoffs either way.
they didn't even bring back the reigning champion in the Widowmaker 1v1?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that should be an automatic you're in. Like,
Yeah.
the Widowmaker 1v1 seems like it's going to be like our, NBA dunk contest or something like that. And the reigning champion should automatically be brought in.
Was it
the
sure?
next year. But
Yeah, it was
Surefour
Surefour
wasn't even invited. Yet Violet and Jonak.
Yeah.
and
Well, the
support
reason that
players
happened is
were-
because they were taking them out of the rosters that
Yeah.
were chosen for the All-Star teams. So if there
But
wasn't
that
another
that
Widowmaker on
shouldn't
your roster,
matter.
No, I don't think it should
Right.
matter.
yeah.
Like-
So it's just a matter of, do we decide that the Widowmaker 1v1 is going to be something serious, and we get the best Widowmakers in the All-Star game so they could be a part of it, or do we take it not so serious and just deal with whoever already made the
what you
All-Star
do
game?
is you go with what I like actually how the NBA does it is with the 3-point contest. If you're in the All-Star game, you can participate in the 3-point contest, but they pull in other people from time to time. You don't even need to be in the NBA to be in the 3-point contest. Like there is a
I
legit.
can try out.
I can just show up.
Craig Hodges
Walk in
won
there.
the
Where's my basketball?
92
One second.
3-point contest.
My basketball.
I can't really
cut.
disagree. I just said Bren should have been in the Widow 1v1.
Yeah. So like Craig Hodges got cut from the Bulls, won the 3-point contest, got cut, and then he got brought back next year to defend his crown, and he was a free agent. Wasn't even playing, and he was in there. So why don't you bring in the best? Also, to dispel that whole thing, Saya Player is arguably one of the best
Yes.
Widowmakers, and he wasn't even invited.
So is Linkser.
Yeah.
And
Well,
Linkser
Linkser's
wasn't
crap.
invited.
Whoa, whoa, whoa,
You're
whoa.
crap.
Leave the boy alone.
The best.
Are we going against hard stats and facts
Yeah,
here? Or...
facts will not get in Ednar's way ever.
No.
Don't ever expect
The
it.
best
It will be
overall
Did the All-Star
player
game
is
just not
so you know.
exist and we're
Definitely.
just spitting nothing now?
Yeah. Just so you know, Linkser
Okay.
is enjoying his time at home with his family in Finland.
I'd take Steffi on Widowmaker over Linkser.
So in general,
Let's
do we
explain your
think,
rank. Though.
Stupid.
so it's season 2, right? So keep that in mind. Do we think this was a step forward from last year?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Overall, yes.
100%.
All right, then good job.
I enjoyed
Overwatch
it a lot more than I did last year.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
It was a lot
The-
more fun and
The
laid back.
timing was better.
Mhm.
I like it in the mid-season as opposed to after. And I think the overall quality of it, whether you liked the games or not, I think the overall quality and pace of it was better, like DEATHBLOW said. And I just enjoyed the fact that we saw emotion from pretty much every single player. I'm pretty sure we even saw Carpe's files. So, like, that's a win.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm pretty
He
sure
was
the
lying to
only
all of us.
I'm pretty sure the only big thing that still needs improvement is the voting in some way, whether that's voting in game modes, whether that's voting in players to specific game modes, like people voting specifically for
let's
players.
not
to
take
that.
not voting off the table. Like we don't need.
Yeah.
Well, what was the
Well,
problem
so that's
with
an
last
option.
year's
That just
Yeah.
there's no fan
Selection.
vote.
Exactly.
League
We could
selection.
vote for the cheerleaders.
What about a
Yeah.
You know, like the
50-50
people
split?
behind.
What about 50-50? Fans account for 50% of the vote, and then you and
that
then
was
you
how it
get
was
the
last
I'm pretty
players.
sure they do
Why
25% of the
give
vote,
them
right?
the ability to ruin?
Why giving the
anything?
fans to do anything?
Yeah, but I don't
Yeah, 'cause
understand why
that
they-
becomes a misrepresentation thing too.
So
It's
they
like,
feel like
exactly.
they're worth a damn.
They're
You
not.
give
that's
them
why you do the
one
votes.
vote.
Yeah.
You give the fans one vote. They get the fan favorite gets in on both sides.
Yeah, like one
Right?
they vote for the captains of each division or something like that.
Yeah, and they don't even have to
Reserve spot.
play, right? Like, yeah, they're a reserve spot, but they're the fan favorite, right?
So
So at least
the
you
fan
know-
favorite for the Hunters, and than someone
the
else.
Hunters actually did something crazy and took over Atlantic and Pacific and just had somebody on each team.
Meng is the captain of both.
If all the fans had done was vote Meng in, I think we would have been able to chalk it up as like we had a better All-Star game because of it. Like we would have all been really happy about it.
Yeah,
and there wouldn't be any conversation.
I was actually fine with Jinmu too because he actually played DPS.
Yeah, but Evital, like really, of all the DP or all the supports that you're gonna throw in there, Evital. Yeah,
he was just on a good team.
At least he played.
True. Yeah, because you also got Pine. And
Pine,
and Ark didn't play until he came to DC, and he got voted in before he even got traded.
Yeah.
Poor Libero.
Pine even tweeted out saying, "Wait, what?" when he was voted in. He didn't even. Yeah.
Everyone on New York Excelsior.
Didn't everybody love watching Pine dab out on the stage? Like,
absolutely.
It was fun.
I love Pine. I have no problem with Pine, but it's just like, okay, so what are we doing here? That's my question. As soon as people from the bench get voted into the All-Star game, just like, why? Then why?
I felt
They wanted to do DPS. They were like, give me DPS.
I felt kind of bad for Pine because like the entire team of the NYXL was standing behind Nene when they were fighting, and Pine had no cheerleaders. I think Dogman was there, but that was it.
Dogman was his only cheerleader. The lone dog, right? He's always behind he was also behind Brent, so we have no respect for Dogman at this point.
I need y'all to calm
It's
down,
all
please.
gone.
I have nothing but respect for Dogman.
Thank you, Adam.
Much respect.
Hey, Dogman was a beast in the actual game.
Yeah.
Even better. Well, as much as I would like to talk about the All-Star game all night, we do have more pressing matters at hand when it comes to the direction that the league is taken, kind of like throughout the rest of the season. So lately, there had been a lot of rumors circulating that we could potentially see the introduction of forced 2-2-2 team compositions, and that was first reported by Slasher on Cross Counter. And recently, I believe this was on Thursday, Halo of Thoughts had basically squashed rumors in a report, saying that it just was not happening in Stage 3. Now, Rob, I know kind of pre-show, we do have a follow-up to this. So what's the current situation in regards to the 2-2-2 lock and the Overwatch League?
So currently, it looks like, according to a bunch of sources that are like limited to Frito and Halo of Thoughts, as well as some inferences coming from Slasher, that kind of a big swath across the board is there are, for starters, many assumptions that are coming, but the overall agreement is that with regards to 2-2-2 role lock, this is something that people are predicting is a possibility coming in the future. And in the future being relatively later than we had initially thought, which we thought initially could possibly have been the Stage 3. But what's been happening now is that since Stage 3 is looking to be a little bit less likely, people are also saying maybe not even until the end of the summer, and it may actually hit the general public then maybe before Overwatch League, and then other people are kind of on the other end saying blah blah blah. And that's what we're kind of here to discuss. But what Totem said initially in the pre-show is that we'll probably just still discuss it here today with a bunch of us to see what we think about the possibility of if it's good enough to be included. Is this something that has pros and cons, of course? And then further, like the update isn't really pertinent for Stage 3 analysis, so that's something that you can actually remove from your considerations right now. That's kind of what people are saying. And then they would even go a step further where a lot of people are agreeing that against Stage 4 you can remove that from a consideration for what we're going to be discussing.
Yeah, so basically what has happened in this 3-3 meta is we've kind of seen the tier list evolve over time when it comes to the overall team. So I think it's pretty evident right now there are a top 2 that are almost untouchable right now. That, of course, being the Stage 1 and Stage 2 champions, the Vancouver Titans and the San Francisco Shock, respectively. Then, you a step down below that, you have New York Excelsior. And then basically you have
the Outlaws,
a couple of gatekeeper teams who are good, but they can't beat the top teams. And then you have the rest of the league, essentially. So basically what ends up happening is all of the close teams are in that play-in tournament seeding of like the 7th through like the 14th in the Overwatch League. And if we're not going to have any sort of balance changes, chances are we're going to follow a similar trajectory moving forward, and the likelihood of seeing the Shock and the Titans have another match come Stage 3 Finals is very likely. Now, I know a lot of us probably got pretty heated this week when we first heard the rumors that it was not actually coming. I know my Twitter was blowing up from a lot of other podcasters. And, you know, we've been talking in DMs about it as well, and of course in the staff lounge. And to me, it always comes down to, at the end of the day, the league doesn't want to introduce something mid-season. And as good as I think 2-2-2 can be for the league,
they don't want to introduce something mid-season. They introduce patch balances that change the meta completely mid-season. So, like, this whole, like, yeah, we don't want to change things so much. Like, I'm sorry, you introduced Brig in Stage 4 of last season and changed the meta completely. Yeah. So, don't act like this is something so different. This is something that could help the health of the game, that could help the health of the Overwatch League, and that could put them into a better spot when going to home cities next year. And that should be their primary focus. And I think, yes, there's probably some teams that don't want it, aka San Francisco Shock and Vancouver Titans, right? Like, yeah, why would we want it?
I honestly think they'd probably be fine.
Yeah, they'd probably be fine, but they're dominating right now. So if you're dominating, you don't give it up.
Yeah.
Halo said that all 20 teams were for it.
Yeah, according to the report, all 20 teams wanted it. And
but Halo's
it's
also
a matter of competitive,
according to assumptions, we should
competitive
say.
balance and fairness. I think is the reason not to do something like that mid-season. And let's be honest, as long as it happens to everybody at the same time, it's competitively fair.
Balanced.
Everybody has the same amount of time to react to it, adjust to it, and plan accordingly. And I'll guarantee you, at least 18 of the teams want it to happen. And when the vote is that staggeringly in favor of one over the other, I don't think they're going to not do it because the top two teams that are flourishing in this meta want to keep it there. I think the issue is more they're trying to protect their game. They had a very specific vision with Overwatch, and they've violated it once. They never wanted Hero Lock to go into place. And to be honest, I was kind of with them. I'm like, well, can't we just figure out the balance? Like, there was no league or anything like that at this time. But, you know, reports right now on viewership are really good for Overwatch League. And if they can maintain that, great. My entire fear with them not doing 2-2-2 lock is that people are going to stop watching this game when it's goats all the time. There's not one play that's happened so far this year that's more exciting than the Pine flank on Route 66 on Widowmaker. And like, those were the fun and exciting plays. That's Overwatch in its best form. You know, showcasing the talent of all the players that get selected. That seems like a really valuable thing to do. But they want to protect their vision of the game and the shape they want it to be in, is why I think they're not doing it. But there's no balance changes in this patch. What's going to change? If people were serious, listen, if people are just complaining because they always complain and they're going to watch the game no matter what they do, then fine, let's wait, let's do it, you know, technically the best way. But they have to get it right. They waited a while to address goats, and then they tried to go nuclear with one patch, and they failed. So the pressure's on them now. Does it have to be roll lock? No. It has to be the death of goats, I think. Otherwise, it's going to start to affect viewership. It's going to slow the rate of growth. Even if the game continues to grow, it'll grow slower because of this. And yeah, no, I'm concerned.
I'm going to play devil's advocate really fast, and then I'll let you talk, Totem. But think of it this way. Do you think that they're worried if they change the meta that it will actually affect the viewership in a negative way? Because yes, all we're saying is like, yes, we'd love to see people pop off. We'd love to see this. But they've gained viewers by playing this same meta pretty much the entire 2 seasons, right? Like, if they changed the rules of football mid-season, there would be people that would stop watching, right? Because they don't understand it anymore, and it takes you a while to understand it. So now people understand GOATs a little bit more, right? And the casual viewer can watch it and understand what's happening.
They do change the rules mid-season in football all the time.
Right,
It's called
I
the
know.
referee makes it up on the spot.
But they don't change the fact that there's a quarterback and a wide receiver, right? Like, if they were like, now we're going to have 3 quarterbacks this season.
But
Get ready!
But the meta in that case is determined by the teams, because the Miami Dolphins did change the meta. They unleashed a Wildcat offense, and they absolutely destroyed the New England Patriots in a surprise, glorious performance that will forever live in my brain, because anytime Tom Brady loses is a good day for humanity. But
he works hard.
It's stuff that can happen. It's a meta that kind of defines the core of what the game is, and I don't think it would. I don't think they're worried it would negatively impact viewership if like more exciting things started happening. I think they can kind of see and I think it's more altruistic, I guess, than that. Like it's about, no, they didn't envision anybody being forced to do anything. If there's some good heavy tank cheese strat that's really good to defend it, at the last point or something like that, they want you to be able to play that in the moment if it's best. But what they need to worry about is the fact that nobody's getting to watch all these great players. We mentioned them a bunch: Pine, Linkser, all these guys that aren't in the All-Star game and didn't get a chance to even really hit the stage this year. I think that's more important, and I think even they'd agree that that's a negative side effect that should be avoided.
Is there no pressure on the teams though? Like, because we've seen an instance, especially this season, where you have Charge and you have Hunters, and you had these moments where they create such headaches for teams that focused on practicing GOATs by going outside the box the most and putting the most out there on trying new things. And I feel like it's a case where a lot of teams are settling for being mediocre at GOATs versus trying new shit. Like, I mean, at some point, like you said, you could play anything you want. That's the whole thing outside 2-2-2, right? You can play any character you want. You can try anything you want, any specific point, any specific ground, whatever.
Some of them are settling for being awful too, by the way.
And that's the thing. Is like, I understand. You made a good point about Blizzard protecting their vision of the game. And if they go 2-2-2, it's different from just introducing Brig, right? Because you can tweak Brig, you can pull her out, you can lock her for 2 weeks or whatever. But once you say we're doing 2-2-2 now, you're committed to that for a while, and you're now creating a new game. And who knows about the people at the studios as far as developing what their incentive was for creating this game. And what that changes. So I kind of put more emphasis on the teams to, go outside the box and try to do something, try to shake it up more, because Hunters showed that it works. Like when you have Hunters in your week and you have another game, you're probably gonna lose the Hunters. Because
waking up when the Hunters are above 15th in the standings or wherever they are, like they're not a model example of how to win. They're a great example of how to sell jerseys and how to be really popular. And when there's an unpopular meta, go against it, fine. But I think the vast majority of these teams want to be the best team in the league. And even Bonnie made a decent argument in the midst of an 0-7 season for why the Houston Outlaws should continue to play GOATs, and it made me stop and think about it. It also made me go, no, that's wrong. You're just losing. Stop it. And so there's two sides to it for sure. And listen, there's rosters that are better than the Chengdu Hunters. Like, I'm sorry, I know they're popular, but and they're not bad by any stretch. And there'd be metas where they succeed. But I think there's rosters and teams that are above and below them that are just better than theirs and would do even better playing the DPS comp than them. So it's not that their way can't work. It's just I'm not really buying that teams should necessarily want to. It should be a desperation move when you don't have any other choice. You kind of go somewhere else. It shouldn't be your level 1 plan, I don't think, necessarily.
Right, and it's important to note, if the 2-2-2 lock was something that they did want to implement, they couldn't just do the 2-2-2 lock. There would have to be another wave of balance changes to, help alleviate some of the characters that would completely fall out. Brigida probably being a primary example of this. But at the end of the day, yes, we have seen balance changes hit live, but the meta that we're seeing in the Overwatch League doesn't directly translate to what we're actually seeing in our games when we are playing on the ladder. Because when you look at the pick rates lately in the 3-3 meta in the Overwatch League, really the only DPS hero that we're seeing above 10% pick rate at this point has been Sombra, as opposed to what we're seeing in our latter games. We're seeing a wider variety of tanks. We've seen an increase of the pulled pork tank combo with Orisa and Roadhog. We have 9 or 10 DPS heroes that are above what Sombra is currently at pick rate wise in the Overwatch League. And as a casual fan, people are going to want to watch something that they can relate to. They're not watching goats and then suddenly going, hey, we should do this on ladder, because it's not as viable as what it is in the Overwatch League.
Yeah, to that point, like, if they're going to introduce something into the Overwatch League that is not accessible to everyone immediately, then there's going to be riots in the streets and on Reddit. And that second one is the one that we don't really care about, if that makes sense. But like the whole thing about giving role lock is there are way more implications of what happens inside of the game and in the development office than anyone could possibly even imagine. Like the fact that they've been working on workshops for so long with a smaller team, that is really, 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 really telling on a lot of this. And given that workshops is already a bunch of tools that they're like trying to basically say, this is how we made the game, let's just convert existing things into a tool set that we can give our players to mess around with, versus let's change everything that the game is. You know what I mean? And let's code it all, and then let's try to balance it. Like, all of these things kind of fall into place with a lot of minimal testing. I feel like it's better off suited just to being like, look, meta's going to be screwy. It's going to be needing to be tested for a while. Let's wait until the off season when we can just screw around with that and have the teams practice and mess with their rosters then.
But I think with 222 Rollock, you're looking at something more on the lines of growth and expansion, right? Because right now, developing a new hero, you're screwed, right? Because you have to balance them between healers, tanks, and DPS, because the options are unlimited, right? So, like, making all these hybrid heroes, you're really making the game much harder to balance. And if you could categorize them, then you only have to balance them against the players in their category. Because you can't play Brig and two other healers, right? Yeah. And I'm sorry, if they nerf Brig for a hot minute, fine. Great, whatever, get her out of here for a minute, right? Like, they haven't nerfed Reaper, and Reaper's never been in the meta, so, like, who cares?
But
right?
that's the thing, though, is the first time the moment the inception of 222, you now have to rebalance that whole roster.
Yeah,
because you don't have a starting point.
You don't have to rebalance the whole roster.
Yes, you do. You have to, because
certain characters
not
that aren't being played right now. Like Roadhog, you have to balance, but he's not being played right now. Brig's the only one I can
you have
think
is
of.
Reinhardt, right? So then every other tank has to be rebalanced.
Every single tank in the tank category is a true tank, in my opinion. And I know the argument for Roadhog, and I think it's crap. Roadhog has things no other tank has. He has a big hero pool. He's got an ability to block damage. And it's funny, but it's because he's really fat. And he's also got a way to reduce damage dealt. And he hits his breather, and he takes less damage, and he's really fat. Like, people use Brig shields to hide their Widowmaker behind. You're going to tell me somebody can't hide behind Reinhardt's big fat belly?
Guardian druids. And wow, honestly, right there.
The game would be a slightly suboptimal if they just threw a 2-2-2 lock into what they have right now, but it would be more entertaining than it is to watch at the moment. And also, no matter what you do, some form of meta is going to develop, right? And also,
well, I think that's part of what they're concerned about.
Spread it out.
I think they might be concerned about introducing 222 lock because when dive was a thing and the only thing, everyone was complaining about it, and then goats came and people were like, hey, a new thing, and now people hate
what
it.
You wish for, right?
Yeah,
people will always complain about it. Yeah, that's always going to be the case. Yeah. Don't try to make Reddit happy. Just try to make more people joining the game to play it and play comp, and try to get more people to watch Overwatch League. And when those are your two goals, I think you still come down to, at the end of the day, the best way to get those results moving in the direction you want as fast as possible, both happening as quickly as possible and the results increasing as fast as possible, is a 2-2-2 roll lock. And if they want to play the long game, fine, but they need to be not making no balance changes in the anniversary patch. They need to be doing something to address the fact that GOATS is happening. And the truth is, right now in comp, it's a very healthy 2-2-2 meta. It's a lot of fun. A lot of things are viable. If you go into a game with a tank and a healer, you can probably force dive if that's what you want to play, and it'll be successful. You can probably force bunker and Reinhardt compositions, and it'll be reasonably successful. If you guys are better, you'll win. And so I think if you take that meta and just kind of enforce the 2-2-2 aspect of it into Overwatch League, you'd get something very, very similar in all likelihood. So I think it's a unique time in the game. It probably would work better right now after the most recent patch they did to just put a 2-2-2 lock in. Maybe it wouldn't always be the case, but I think right now in this meta, I think we would be just fine.
All right, I'm going to say this, and before any of you chime in...
Oh, sorry, I can't hear anybody. Did everybody cut out?
All right,
before any of you chime in and tell me I'm an idiot...
You're an idiot.
Okay?
You'll preface it with that.
I am prefacing this with, let me finish what I say before you chime in. 2-2-2 is not the answer. It's not. 100%. It is not the answer. Because, all right, was Season 1 boring to watch? Was the dive meta boring to watch? No, it was not.
It got stale, but it wasn't boring.
It got stale, but like it wasn't boring to watch. So if you balance...
What characters were in dive? How many tanks, how many healers, how many DPS?
But if you force that... But, all right, is triple DPS, 2 support, 1 tank fun to watch too?
Yeah.
Not really.
Are the hunters fun to watch?
Yeah.
Just because they're playing against goats.
But see, that's the thing. They're still fun to watch.
It's fun to watch, but every class is represented.
Because it's against goats.
In 1, 2, 3, there's no 0.
Right.
But
when you're in contrast to what we're getting. Like, we're getting goats.
In the 1, 2, 3
in
the 1, 2, 3 meta, they regularly brought the D.Va in. That was a regular, substitution or answer or way to try to counter it. So I don't know. It still was more diverse than this.
If you do the balance changes to actually kill goats, not pseudo kill goats, what they tried to do, you defect back to 2-2-2 or a more interesting non-3-3 meta.
Yeah, I don't get how they can't kill something they create. Really
you're
difficult.
Not actually creating an interesting meta.
Why not?
By forcing 2-2-2.
The ends justify the means, EDANAR. This is the planet Earth. This isn't the clouds.
Welcome. Ed.
This is where the end matters, right? Like how you get there doesn't matter to me. They're not doing anything objectionable. They're just changing a rule, and they'd be doing it in the middle of the season. To me, it's I don't care. Listen, I want to be clear. I'm not actually advocating for 2-2-2. I think in the ideal world, what EDANAR's saying is correct, and I agree with it. Just think Goats needs to die.
Can you repeat that real quick?
Because
can you go back like 10 seconds
something
to
say. That?
I'm saying the ideal scenario. Like, let's not trip over it. You do accidentally. Broken clocks are right twice a day. I tweet this at you like 3 times a week, and it's a thing. But it's just a matter of we need to get the end result here faster. If they get rid of 2-2-2 at the end of the year, and the meta's healthy, is anybody going to care? We're going to have a 2-second conversation about how it might affect things, but like it's probably fine. Be on the lookout for a new hero like Brig to maybe ruin things again, and then they could.
Healthy. It's probably going to be because a 2-2-2 roster finally became the meta, right? And that's why they're going to consider it healthy. I think that's always going to be the best meta. Like Chengdu's fun to watch now because they're playing goats. If you ever watch a match where Chengdu is defending with quad DPS and someone runs quad DPS into them, it's awful to watch. The cameramen don't know who to observe. You're watching one person who's doing nothing as people just die in the kill feed. It's terrible. 2-2-2 is always the best meta for a viewing experience. And if you're a player in game, think about the best games that you have in comp. It's almost always going to be a 2-2-2 versus 2-2-2 matchup. And especially if you're a tank player or a support player, if you see 2 DPS already locked and you see someone lock that 3rd DPS, you're pissed. Like 2-2-2 is already generally what's accepted by the populace. That's what most people want to see in their games. It makes for the best experience. And if you lock that in the competitive scene, it's going to make more interesting metas to view. Yes, triple DPS, like the Rogue dive back in the day before Overwatch League, that was kind of fun. Like seeing Taimu being able to rip out Roadhog, that's sort of fun too, as well as like a novelty. But as a meta, it's never as good as just watching straight up 2-2-2. The game just works better, and Blizzard needs to realize that their game got figured out. 2-2-2 works best, and they need to double down on that because that's going to net them better gains in the long run.
I mean, technically 3-3 works best, but
like
2-2-2 to work best.
It's more fun, is what I mean.
Yeah.
More fun for everyone.
Honestly, I've been like pretty on the fence about the 2-2-2 lock thing, but what you said about when we're playing ranked and I see someone choose a third of a role and me being pissed, I was like, oh shoot, that's right. Like,
like the whole point goes back to what you were saying when it's like with the ranks. You want it to be you want Overwatch League to be as close as possible to what you can do when you flip the game on, even on your Xbox at home or on your PC or on your PlayStation. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It really doesn't.
Well, one thing, going back to kind of the viewer aspect of it, like when you have so many DPS fighting against DPS and it's terrible, I feel like that was kind of something that they ran into last year when it was dive, because how many times was it like, oh well, that person just got a double kill but we didn't see it because we were looking at a Genji.
Hi, Bob.
Oh my god, Bob.
That's the most, like, to me, that's almost like a Reddit argument, and like spectating is a super difficult job.
What
the meta is, there's always going to be times you miss the play. Is it hectic when there's a lot of DPS players? I don't know that it's much more hectic than when you're like throwing diva bombs across the map and things like that. Like, granted, that makes a big audio cue that tells the spectator to go over there and check it, but so do all the other ultimates at the same time. And I think the broadcast teams have gotten a lot better, and they'll continue to get better. They're refining the process. And they're improving, and I think it's worth protecting those niche environments if you can, but I just don't know that we can. And what are we risking when we don't make the move and just bite the bullet and go, okay, Taimu can't play Roadhog anymore, and it was pretty PogChamp when he pulled it out when nobody else was playing it, but like at the end of the day, right now what we're getting is Pine and Linkser and all these great players that make great plays and make even matchups. Like, listen, even if Houston was still bad, how much more enjoyable would their matches be to watch if we got to see Linkser pop off on occasion and kill 4 people on Widowmaker? Like, it would just make Florida matches better. Like, that's what made Florida watchable last season, was Saya player being an absurd human being.
What are we actually losing?
What
are we losing with the risk? What is the negative part? Because all we're saying is like I don't like it. You know what I mean?
The negative is it would be really cool if Taimu ever played again if he was able to play Roadhog, and like I would protect that if I could. But like the balance in the scale is very tipped in one direction to me.
Right. The negative is that we're like going against this vision of the game, but the devs at Overwatch have already said that they've accepted the fact that their vision of the game is not the game. Right? Like, they have stated numerous times they didn't want to do Hero Lock, but they did it. They didn't ever think or want a deathmatch version, but guess what's in Overwatch, right? Like, we are moving in a direction that they have to develop the game based on the behavior of the players. And the players have taken it to this level. And they have to do something about it, and I think they're working on it. I really do. And I think the fact that them implementing it in Overwatch League, I think they had to weigh the pros and cons. They had to say, like, hey, this will be easier than implementing it in ranked because of all of the downfalls that we'd get from, this hero and this hero and this hero, right? Like, you put the best of the best and say, here's a 2-2-2 roll-lock, they'll make it work, right? Yeah. You put anywhere from silver to GM in 2-2-2 roll-lock, and you'll get flamed for every sort of reason. So
at the start.
Yeah,
I think
right. I mean, they kind of push it even when you're selecting in the game. They kind of push a 2-2-2 meta as it is because it's just like, oh, you only have one tank. What are you doing?
Tanks,
like, not enough tanks or not enough healers or whatever. And
yes,
right.
They're there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because like you said, with when you get that third DPS, it's just like, oh, you only have one tank. Good luck, guys. Basically, is
I like
how it ends up going.
I don't have enough defense heroes before.
Yeah.
Before they
back in the day,
they definitely got rid of that.
Oh, sorry, I gotta go Torb.
But no, like as far as viewership though, like I think it has benefited from GOATs. But yeah, I'm fully with you. I mean, this is just kind of a devil's advocate argument as far as it made it easier for like a slightly more casual viewer to understand what's happening, because it's just one big group that's moving as one, and they're all pushing in, doing this. And so I think that's part of why the numbers and the viewership numbers have increased, because it's a lot easier to view. You can kind of see what's going on. Is it stale? Absolutely. I'm so done with watching GOATs. But at the same time, weren't two of the best matches we've had in the league all together have been the stage finals for stage 1 and stage 2, like hands down, even better than some of the matches that we had in all of last season.
That's
You don't have those moments, but the whole match is just like, oh my god, what's going to happen? Like, who's going to win this match?
We just finally have two
was a whole lot of fun.
teams.
I don't agree that those were necessarily like the best. I think they were every bit as good as some of the best matches from stage 1. Stage playoffs especially, like, history's going to forget those 2 matches so fast. Like, who cares? It's not even a loss that sits on Vancouver's record. So, like, how often are you going to have the conversation that their win streak ended when there's a 0 in the loss column on their records? Like, how many caveats are you going to put on it? Like, history is going to forget stage playoffs. To me, most of the regular season playoffs were bigger, better, more important because context matters and those things. And listen, don't get me wrong, the stage playoffs were great. I think you explained the boost in the numbers and the growth of the game in the league by, like, Overwatch at its core is a really great game, and there's a lot all the things that brought us to the game. Like, Overwatch League just puts new eyes on it when it's on ESPN2 and Disney XD, and new people see it and they fall in love with it for the same reasons we did and the reasons they built the game. And that's the heroes themselves. They're what make the game compelling. They're what make the game interesting. They bring people in. But honestly, I think GOATS is more complex. Like, I'm a Masters player, and I couldn't tell you why anybody won a team fight at the end of GOATS. I need to rewind it and watch it 7 times. When did the Zarya and the Brig use their cooldowns? And like, I don't know what it's so micro, everything that happens in GOATS. Right. That, like, and it took Taimu spoon feeding it to us on Twitter for us to understand why Nene's grab wasn't a complete throw and just a thonker and like a fat finger, because that's what it looked like on camera. Everything is so micro with GOATS that I don't think it's made it more simplified. I think for the simple fan, you're not completely wrong in the sense that, like, it's easier to tell who's winning a team fight because like, it goes fast, or only one person dies at a time, and it takes 45 seconds for the healing to be overwhelmed on the next target or something like that. But simplified doesn't always mean better, I guess, is the other part of the argument. Like,
I think the reason
people will understand a Widowmaker putting 4 people's heads in their crosshairs and clicking and realize how ridiculous that is when there's a 180 involved in a quick scope, and you can see the skill in all those plays. So, and I think that's what's important, even if it's a little hectic, and even if I go, holy smokes, how did they win that team fight? Like, that's almost an exhilarating feeling and a way to leave a team fight too. So
I think the fact that 222 is not in competitive Overwatch, like in ranked, is because it requires so much communication. So yes, you have these teams playing it, but you don't have ranked people playing it because they don't have the communication that people that have been playing together for a year or 2 years have. Like, they just don't. So that's where I think you're going to see biggest difference between ranked and Overwatch League. Just in general, throughout all of history.
I do think that brings up a good point, because if they enforce 222 lock in ranked, there's people who, I mean, it would, if you did 222 lock, you'd also have to have separate SRs for each role for each player, because
that would make comp better. Now, the 222 roll wouldn't affect comp, but the separate SRs per thing would absolutely improve.
I'd argue 222 would affect comp, just not positively, because, like, someone who never has played a healer in their life gets into a game and everybody insta-locks the other roles, and now they have to play healer, then the team's going to do poorly.
It honestly just depends on what system that comes with. You know what I mean? Like, we're kind of projecting, like, well, this is bad because this and this. And it's like, well, we're kind of just making assumptions now. Like,
if they did 222,
what's the package deal of 222? Not like, is this good or is this bad? It's like, what comes with it is going to determine whether or not it's successful.
If they did 222, it would have to come with other things as well for it to.
It would have a caveat. Exactly.
You guys have all kind of talked about how the 222 is kind of already in our ranked matches, or it's not GOATs. Like, even in Grandmasters, you're seeing more DPS play. You're seeing a more 222. What about just having 222 pure Overwatch League, not on ladder? Because right now, ladder is not 3-3. Like, you even watch the streams, you watch Grandmasters, they're not generally running 3-3. They're running different comps. They're running more of a 2-2-2 or weird variations. why do we need to implement 2-2-2 into those when they're not running 3-3 or the stale meta? Like, we look at the meta.
Because you can't have different rules in both.
Yeah.
But you look at the
upset.
meta, and the meta is defined by the pro players. Well, none of us are pro players. Plain and
Because
simple.
we can't pull off.
People want to copycat what's going
They
on in
want to
Pro League,
copycat,
regardless
but
of what
they're
rank you're at.
not.
They're
Right now,
not.
That's not the
because
point.
It's more about communication than it is about skill, right?
I can wrap my head around I'm not good enough or smart enough. Like, I'm too smooth brained to pull off what the pros do. I can wrap my head around that, but I don't like when like they're playing on a different balance patch or whatever like that. When the heroes themselves are different, it felt terrible to have, you know, Stormbow instead of whatever on Hanzo and, you know, things like that. That was bad, but I don't think 2-2-2 would be much of a problem as far as what it would do. I
think it would allow us to mimic Overwatch League more.
Yeah, it would.
Yes, we're not pro players. Yes, I do not play at the same level as the pro players. But if I'm not aiming to achieve a better performance by playing at that level, that's like saying a bronze player that says they play Reaper and it's effective. Yeah, that's why you're still in bronze. It's because you're playing Reaper, and once you get closer to getting out of bronze, Reaper doesn't work, and you go back into
like
bronze.
when Linkser played it?
And Rollock does more than just like influence what the meta is. It influences people's ability to troll me and flame me in my games by queuing as Ana for the first half of the map and then switching to Tracer partway through, and I'm on Reinhardt and I can't, you know what I mean? So it ensures that I'm getting a team composition that's coherent, and it takes people's ability to screw that up away from them a little bit and in a positive way. I think it's hard to like restrict people's options and make a better experience overall, but I think this is one that would certainly work, because you need to worry more about the overall experience than you do about that one idiot that wants to ruin our team composition's experience. You know, if you make it better for the other 5 people than you do for that one guy is like just going to eventually become okay with the fact that he can't.
Let's just call that person Jake.
I was going to call him Ednar.
I'm actually surprised at this point that they didn't try to wrap 2-2-2 in with a event of some sort. Where, you know, we usually get like, oh, Lucio Ball or CTF. Like, the fact that they didn't say, hey, for 2 weeks, we have this mode you can play. That's 2-2-2. And that allows you to gather a bunch of data, right, to see how people are, you know, performing, what people think. You get to see the social media aspect, blah, 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 Reddit, as usual. But I it's baffling to me, because you made a good point earlier where the comments, like the tips, do try to guide you towards playing 2-2-2. So why has, at this long of a time period, nothing is like, okay, we're going to put this mode in for a little bit, see how it takes, take it back out, tweak it a bit, and then see what we do after that point. At least give people a taste, rather than, you know, what Jane did, where they kind of forced it and then advertised it. Because even watching that, I mean, it's like, okay, cool, but I wasn't playing in it, right? Like, I wasn't there was no contact there, so I lost scope of what was going on and could care less. It was just kind of a talking point to see what was going on. So
but I mean, look at your audience here, right? Like, who's playing arcade and who's playing competitive? They're very different people, right? Like,
you gotta get your loot boxes though.
Yeah.
I don't
I'll queue that 1v1 all day.
But that's the thing, though. Like, if you're getting numbers from the people playing in the 2-2-2 arcade, they're not competitive-minded people, or at least they're not competitive-minded people at the point that they're playing arcade. When I play arcade, I play to mess around.
Right, but in the same light, the people who are queuing for mystery heroes aren't the same people queuing for 6v6 competitive capture the flag or something like that, right? The minute you put competitive in the title, a whole different crowd is going for it.
Honestly, you could argue.
That's a great point, because that allows you to find out who's going to play it.
Yeah.
So if you can see the correlation, because all you care about is you say, okay, we have this new mode. We have our, you know, back in analytics. We see that the people who usually play competitive or even get in groups and that are either higher ranked or whatever are flocking to this 2-2-2 mode versus the CTF and the mystery heroes. That gives you validation that the competitive audience wants this mode. And that, I mean, but then actually brings up another discussion is, okay, well, how much of your viewership is casual versus competitive? Because who's going to care more, right? The guys who are watching the most, if they don't even play the mode, then they don't care. Does that make sense? Or is that me kind of jumping to conclusions?
Yeah,
I mean, that's what I'm saying, is like that correlation is what you're looking for, but the fact that they haven't done it yet to even get that data is the part that's just kind of leaving me amiss right now.
I mean,
the only test though that we've had with 222 was in the workshop because they did Mystery Heroes 222, and that's been it up until this point.
Yeah, you could argue that that's kind of what the PTR is for. They could probably, I mean, they've said that the PTR is to test things, and then if they don't work, take them back and tweak them, but they kind of just always put it onto the live servers pretty much every time.
Yeah, they've said the problem with the PTR is nobody plays it.
That's true.
And if they do, they play off roles. Like, you're like, okay, I'm on the PTR, it doesn't matter, I'm going to play tank for the first time.
And to that point...
So it's not good data.
To that point, that's why I'm really surprised the workshop is coming out on Tuesday, because the workshop has been the best thing that has ever happened to the public test run, because so much attention is being brought to all of these new creations coming from the community. And with it going to live, chances are the people that would be testing it on the PTR probably aren't going to anymore because they don't have something fun to play around with at this point.
Yeah. And we're talking about arcade modes. You could honestly, you could test the 222 in an arcade mode, but then if they did implement 222, they could just they don't have to implement 222 in quick play, or they could have a specific arcade mode that isn't 222 locked. So you could still have classic, they could even call it classic Overwatch, and just you could still have that there and have 222 forced in comp. You could have the best of both worlds that way.
Mm-hmm. Why don't you get comp options, right? Like, here, you want to play 222, go here. Here, you want to play whatever, go here. See which one wins. I dare you. See which one wins.
All right, well, let's go ahead and take a look ahead at Stage 3, which, we still got a couple of weeks out. So one of the things about the Overwatch League that I know we all enjoy is the banter kind of between the teams. You always kind of have the trash talking. With the All-Star game, most of that was from Talent Takedown, which kind of is the best part of All-Stars, unfortunately. 100%. But... as podcasters, as people that really have our ear to the ground, one of the most important aspects of this is the hot takes going into the new stages and just talking trash on whatever team. I know some of us have a favorite to kind of rag on in our respective podcasts. So I want to get your guys' hot takes going into Stage 3 about whatever team you have out there, and really leave no stone unturned when it comes to this.
I can start. I have I have 2 hot takes. 1, Washington is going to get more than 1 win in Stage 3. I think they can manage. They've been improving. Second hot take, not really a hot take. Houston is not going to get better. And I'm saying that as a Houston fan. If anything, they're going to get worse.
Is that a hot take?
Actually, you know what? Hot take. They're going to get 0 map wins in Stage 3.
Ooh, there you go. Now you're crossing the threshold.
That depends if they get bought or not.
And I'm saying that as a Houston fan. And now, as an Atlanta fan, I think Atlanta will make it into the stage playoffs in Stage 3.
Listen, so it's not a hot take, but if we can...
You're muted.
I was muted. Bad news for Atlanta fans. They have the 5th hardest strength of schedule in Stage 3. They're not.
That's what makes it a hot take, baby.
They're not making
so if we can. So with the whole New York shenanigans, we beat them twice, cool. But it's the whole consistency thing, right? So if we can do something this first week, I don't think we need to beat both. We need to beat one, even though it's probably damn near impossible. But this is the proving point, because we're going into our homestead at the end of this, right?
Yeah.
So, and the homestead is known for being, it's kind of like when you had your homecoming. You play the easy team so you can win. And the beginning of this schedule is where the strength is. So if we can show that we're competitive and that we can push these teams and even beat these teams, speaking of San Francisco Shock and then Vancouver Titans, that's a huge win in our corner, because in our head, especially all the fans and all the watch parties and everything, we're above excited because we're a new team and we're above where we thought we were going to be with players that aren't from previous teams or anything like that, besides Baby Bay and that, right? But we're doing above and beyond what the fans expected, and the players have shown growth, and they've shown a high ceiling, but they have also shown a low floor. So I think this is a great time this week. I'm looking, it's going to be huge for us. So we'll see what happens no hot takes there. I'm just looking on the bright side.
What you're saying makes sense. Fan is short for fanatic, and there's no logic involved in fanaticism. So I think that's fine, and it's healthy, and it's exactly what the fan base.
But feelings
should be
aren't
doing,
facts, so that's one thing.
Right. But no, and I think Atlanta's proving to be a very viable team. Obviously, you don't beat a team like New York, and the analog everybody made, and it's the right one to make, is London couldn't beat Houston last year either. So there's times that just teams match up well against other teams. It's something you see in sports all the time, and I think that's something you're certainly seeing here. But
Dolphins beating Patriots.
Yeah, they had their number for a bit, But as far as teams I think are going to stand out in stage 3, I think we're going to see the Dragons repeat. We're going to see the Guangzhou Charge improve a little bit. I think the Dynasty are going to find their way back into the stage playoffs in stage 3 as well. But at the end of the day, nothing's changing, so nothing's changing, right? Like it's leaps and bounds. We're talking about tier differences with most of these teams. In these first couple stages, New York's going to probably be the only team that can have much of a chance against San Francisco and Vancouver outside of those two teams specifically. Maybe London if they can kind of make another step up, but they had a kind of an easy schedule this stage. Yeah. I don't know. To me, stage 2 is very predictable. So when I want to look at who's going to do well in stage 3 with no changes upcoming, I just look at strength of schedule and I just gave you like the top 3 that weren't there already. So.
I do have an open question to everybody just about London. London at its peak, do you think they are the best team in the Overwatch League?
No, not anymore.
Okay.
Not anymore.
I don't think there was ever a time they were, to be honest. Maybe stage 1.
Stage 1, yes.
In the playoffs last year, but I don't even think at the end. I think they were just the best at the playoff meta, right? Like
they won the stage 1 playoffs too, though.
It was.
Bitfire knows how to clutch it out. Bitfire knows how to.
Yeah, they're very experienced on the big stage and in the big moment.
Well, it didn't help them in stage 2.
They also know how to take breaks. But it didn't help them in stage 2. But who really cares about stage 2, right? Who are you talking about? You're talking about the season finals, right? Like that's what mattered, and that's why they have a name right now, and that's why they're still in every single discussion, no matter what. And I think that they did it right. They know when to go, they know when to take a break, and they have some way to clutch it out at the end when it matters the most.
Yeah.
Having profit helps that too.
So I have a hot take.
Oh no!
Ooh, is it about the Outlaws?
It is not.
I'm going to repeat as stage 3 unlimited champion.
No, I'm not even going to make a. I mean, that's not even a prediction. That's a fact.
You're supposed to say that's a spoiler. Jeez.
It's not even about the Outlaws. It's about their Texas counterparts. Dallas won't win more than 2 matches this stage.
Why?
Here's the thing.
Oh, wait a second.
Ed just likes to make enemies of everybody.
No. Look at the schedule.
Canada, Texas.
I
They
believe
played
it.
New York,
I
Chengdu
believe
twice.
There's
The
There
no
is a
Titans.
realm of validity. looking at
Chengdu
the
twice.
schedule
You
here.
just
Yes, there is,
shot called 2
actually.
wins.
Okay,
Right there.
What I'm predicting is that they will go 1-1 with Chengdu. They will beat the Justice, but they'll lose to the Gladiators, they'll lose to the Titans, they'll lose to the Spark, and they'll lose to the Excelsior. That is 2 wins this stage. And that's not out of the realm of
I
possibility.
think they have a chance to beat Spark. I think they have a chance to beat New York. I think they have a
They
chance.
do, but the
To beat
thing
Gladiators,
is
yeah.
it's Dallas.
They're
I
a
gotta
better.
shit
They're a
on them.
better. They're a better team than the Spark.
They're
by a
not-
long shot. If for no
they're
other
not
reason
Dallas
than
last
it
year.
reminded me how hideous their
I
colors
know,
were. Ednar.
but I just, it would have been too obvious for me to crap on the Outlaws because it's
All
just
right, well,
too easy.
I'll go next.
They don't even have money, do they? Like, how do
We
you
crap on your team, Ednar, but it changes every week, so we can't write the
Hey,
jokes in front of
hey,
you.
Right,
was
that's
gonna-
what I'm saying. Like, hey Ed, who was your favorite team last season?
My favorite team last season, the future
Mayhem.
Chicago team.
It was Mayhem, right? So
The future Chicago team.
now Ed went and said like, "Oh crap, Mayhem sucks. I'm gonna be a Hangzhou Spark fan because China is my hometown."
You skipped when he liked the Valley.
Fair
Oh, wait.
weather.
Then they,
fan.
it's
not a hot
Hangzhou
take
lost to
if you're-
Houston, right? Hangzhou lost
Dissing
to
on
Houston,
Edanar is
didn't
not a hot take, okay?
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
just saying.
Because it's just
Okay.
true, okay?
What happens
You're
if
right.
Houston
Everybody already
gets
knows.
bought and moved to Chicago? And
Are you
then
going to
I
be a
have
Houston fan?
I will yes. Well,
Okay.
it will be a Chicago fan.
I will make you eat your words then. Thank you.
If they get bought and moved to Chicago,
That deep
I
money.
will buy a freaking raucous Chicago jersey.
If he's still on the team by then.
It hurts me to say that.
Oddly
You should buy a
specific, but
Ruma
okay.
jersey or a yeah.
I mean,
something
Rock
else, but whatever.
isn't even a top 20 flex support.
Honestly,
But, like,
I don't know if
Okay,
by the time
I
they're a
don't know that
Chicago
that's
team,
fair.
if half the roster's even going to be
No,
there.
That whole roster is going to be different.
I think
disagree.
I think
disagree.
only
I'm not leaving
Muma,
this
Dante,
city.
and maybe
Okay.
Linkser will stay.
Okay.
I'm not leaving.
Hot take. Guess what? Coaches matter. People in the industry matter, right? Like, you put 6 players that are the best players in the world together and throw them out there with 2 people to coach them and mentor them and get them through things. No, they're going to suck.
When's the last time Rockets touched the bench? In the last 3 years. This man
Mel's
has played.
officially
When they
broken.
accidentally sub Bonnie.
Sub in
in.
Bonnie.
I understand the love for the guy, but
all
he
I'm
has
saying-
yet to taste the bench so that
Okay,
he can improve. Because like you have to. I don't
Who's
think
our
he.
other
I don't think he
option there
practices.
then?
I'm
Bonnie,
sorry, I don't-
Bonnie popped off at the World Cup.
yeah, okay.
I think
So did
Bonnie's
Flower.
a better Zen
Flower,
than Rockets.
great. Yeah, like, I mean, Flower popped off at the World Cup and then sucked in contenders. I mean, whatever.
Yeah.
But,
Because he was
I guess-
resting a wrist that he was about to get surgery.
yeah. I mean, I'm just saying, like, you can't look at a team and only blame the players on the team. You look at Dallas, they have a lot of the same players that they did last year, but guess what? They've got 17 new coaches behind them. Like, you look at an interview with one of the Dallas players, they're like, yeah, we got a tank coach, we got an off-tank coach,
Yeah.
we got a personal assistant
No,
over
it's true.
here, and we've got, like,
Circumstance
Personal
matters
trainer
a
for the
lot.
dog.
It's true.
right, like, I'm not kidding you. So, like, the fact that Houston is on this, like, stalemate of, like, you can't hire, you can't do anything with your life right now,
Yeah.
but you have to try to win in this GOATS meta that you
Mhm.
can't have any support in doing.
I would
And-
I would argue
Sorry.
though, if they brought in new management and coaches, the new management and coaches would think that it's the best decision to replace a lot of the players.
I
Because
don't think so. Why is Houston still
I'd agree.
4th on the Twitch chat, like, stream?
It's that HEB
Cheers,
butter.
right?
Can I give you the real
it's because they have cool colors and a cool logo.
You know why they have fans? It's because of the players. You want to take
Yes.
over a team and get rid of all of the players that are the reason that all of
I
the
think you
fans
keep
are
the
there.
core players.
It's because
I
all the
think if
players aren't
you-
Korean.
if- Okay, but the problem is if
That's
you
why they
take
have so
that
many
team,
fans.
you have an opportunity.
Sorry.
If you take that team, you have an opportunity. You take that team and you move it to Chicago, say, you've got Houston fans and Chicago fans now that will follow you if you keep those players.
Oh no, I'd be way
Definitely.
happier.
I see a Houston
as a
outlaw jersey
Chicago
back there.
fan.
Yeah.
And
Can
the
you get- can you
I'll go
the
get
tape?
mine.
I get
with
your tape?
Houston's new management is they're going to be bought out by the Immortals, and then
No,
they're
so-
just going to be put in another holding pen and not
So-
going to be able to do anything with them.
I have a theory that I'm stealing from my co-host, but the theory that we hold near and dear to our hearts. Yeah, Totem and Ed have heard this. So, Immortals buys Optic. They can't own the Outlaws because it's multi-league ownership. They'd have to split the teams.
Yep.
They sell Outlaws to 100 Thieves.
Ooh.
100 Thieves
Ooh.
takes the Outlaws, Chicago. Again, this is Labasco's take, not mine, so you can gripe or praise him. But
Oh, own it, Ramses. Come on.
Low
Alright,
risk
so-
takes.
Right.
no, so they take them after Chicago. At that point, I think you get rid of Arhan.
Mhm.
We've talked about this. I know Broverwatch's love for the boy Arhan.
You trade him now.
But he's our token Korean. Come
You
on.
trade him
they
now
need
one for
they
one.
need
That's
some-
the only way you.
they
Here's the
can
thing.
beat
somebody
us.
We
to
loved him
Pyro.
because he didn't play, and then he started playing, and
Like,
he
oh,
lost his
right,
charm.
Someone,
His
you
torp
need
was
someone
sick,
to
okay?
hug Tyrone on the bench. I understand.
That's true.
But at this point, I agree with Mel that like you're strung
That's
up
where
by
you
the
went
fact.
wrong.
Boo.
Sorry, Ed, we can't hear you.
You're strung up by the
Don't
fact
say
that
it.
because you don't have money, but like, why wasn't Houston in the McGravy conversation? Why
Yeah.
isn't Houston in the
Because
Sleepy
they can't
conversation?
make
I'll
those.
give you-
They
I'll give you an
cannot
example.
They don't have
do
the
it.
money.
No, I
McGravy
agree with you.
conversation.
And I
They have
I
two
agree.
off takes that are better than McGravy. Don't at me.
I'm
Listen,
a-
like we can, like, there's specific problems with the roster. There's players that can improve. We talked about some specific things. Raucus is an average flex support player. He belongs in Overwatch League. And I don't really think there's, at least among players, I don't think there would be too much dispute in that. He's a better Ana player than he is a Zenyatta player. He's budget right Ryu Jae Hong, right? You can put him on a hero that makes him look not as good as he is because he's more comfortable somewhere else, but if you let him play his main role, even Monty shouted out how good Raucus looked on Ana at times throughout Stage 2. He's not a bad flex support player. The team has terrible strategies. They underperform what their roster is able to do. I would bring in Crimzo. If I was Houston, I would have him put some bench pressure on Raucus because I think he is a spot, or maybe Crimzo's just a better Zen player, and you have Raucus play when Ana's in meta, and you have Crimzo play when Zen's in meta. I would consider bringing in a strong flex or strong main support that can really shot call. And kind of bring communications for the team under control. And I would immediately fire the entire front office. I don't see any reason to keep the general manager on staff that is so slow to react to metas changing that we went all season 1 without a tracer player. He gets an idea in his head, and whether that idea is put in there by Tyrong, he goes on a vast stream and makes terrible claims and insults fans for wanting the team to win and rooting for them. He tells them they're stupid and bad at the game, essentially, like, to paraphrase it. It's a bad look. And listen, why can't this team win on Route 66 like ever? Like, they've won twice ever. Why do they have such terrible maps? It's because Tyrong's a good coach, but he's not the end-all be-all, and he doesn't have the resources to get it together and to fix all of the things that are wrong with the team, and they need a head coach that does. So I really I think they need to kind of bring in some better leadership, both in-game and out-of-game. But they're at least a mid-table roster as far as talent's concerned. They just always have problems and issues that really kind of hold them back and make the players look worse. Are they world beaters? Are they going to be top 3 players at their position? I think Linkser could be. I think Muma could be. I think there's a couple that can be. But they can win and at least get back to being a playoff contender with the roster they have. Memes and jokes aside, I mean, it's fun to make fun of a losing team. I sure did it to the Valiant in Stage 1. And I've been far from kind to Houston throughout Stage 2 because as a fan, I had expectations, and they were very far from that. I thought they had a good shot at a 4-3 stage this stage, especially after I saw them come out and look so good against Vancouver. And then they just doubled down on their terrible, the only thing we could possibly play and succeed with is GOAT strategy, and started to even switch to it on King of the Hill, which they beat Vancouver on. They were one of the better King of the Hill teams in Stage 1. Why? It had nothing to do with GOATs. It let them play Linkser. So they're just doubling down on losing strategies, and that comes from management, not the roster. They may not have what it takes to win the league unless the meta lines up for them perfectly and they get a meta basically identically mirroring what Season 1 Stage 1 is, but there's no reason they can't be involved in Wildcard Weekend based off the roster they have. They're absolutely...
How did we get from hot takes to Houston bad? The coldest take.
Because that's where the takes always go.
The notes say pick a team. Combine 2 topics. The notes say pick a team and tell how to fix it. So I may have jumped ahead to that one.
I volunteered you for that one, DEATHBLOW.
I will say this: another hot take / fix a team.
We're done with this.
No. It's not about the Outlaws. It's not about Dallas. It's not about anything. It's actually something me and Totem actually talked about on Heroes Never Die. By the end of this stage, let me finish before you chime in. Neptuno and Boombox will be off the Philadelphia Fusion.
Whoa.
And the reason I say this is they bring in Alarm, who for Stage 4 will be 18.
Will he?
Yes.
I did not realize.
So Alarm will be 18. They pair Alarm with Elk. They get that duo who, honestly, when Fusion University was at their best, it was purely because of the support line for Fusion University. Those two together were unstoppable.
I'll say this. I don't think you're going to see Alarm sign this season because I think he turns 18 after the cutoff date. Not that I know what his birthday is or what the cutoff date is.
I want to say it's in
but
July.
I just know how highly thought of Alarm is. So the fact that he's not under contract at this time, with somebody just waiting for the day that he turns 18 and becomes eligible, means
July 21st.
July 21st.
July 21st is his 18th birthday.
I think that's Stage 4. I think that's during Stage 4, so he probably doesn't qualify. It's Flower last year.
Yeah, he's this season's Flower.
But
all right, never mind then.
I agree that the second Alarm is 18, Boombox is off the roster, 100%. And then Philadelphia Fusion is back on top.
Yeah, Neptuno, as soon as they get alarm up, Neptuno and Boombox are gone.
Maybe Neptuno.
Stop.
but
Listen, if
definitely
you bring
Boombox.
Mercy back,
Shadow's
Neptuno
gone.
and his Battle Mercy, like, you're killing it. Come on.
Philly's
I don't
not
think
gonna
Mercy's
get
going to be
top
back
of
for
state,
a
I'm
while.
taking. Put in Fraggy or bust.
Not in 222, she's not.
That's true.
I
Hot
disagree,
take.
but okay.
Hot take for me. Los Angeles Gladiators don't make playoffs.
Yeah,
Stage 3.
Right.
I'd agree.
I think they're going down, and they have to fight Titans twice.
Oh, yeah.
Next stage, it's not going to happen. LA Gladiators. I wouldn't be surprised if they just fall apart completely, but I
Yeah.
think best case they go 3 and 4.
I mean, everyone was dumping so hard on NYXL for choking in playoffs, but Gladiators do it almost every time.
Yeah, they haven't won in the
Yeah.
playoffs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they've never won in the playoffs.
You've got to be favored to win in the playoffs to be choking, though.
Mm-hmm. And they only look
Also
good
true.
in stage 2 playing cheese. The second they doubled down on their goats, they stopped looking good,
Yeah.
which is worrying if you want to be a top team.
I think Gladiators have only gotten better, though. I think Gladiators have shown us that they've made changes to make their communication better and that they're getting more comfortable. And I also think hot take Washington Justice will continue to get better. I don't think they'll make the playoffs, but I think they'll be in the top.
They have
12.
to spend money.
I think stage.
They
This
did
is my
spend
hottest
money.
take.
They got Sleepy.
They've been
they
making
got
changes.
Arc.
Stage
They've been
4?
making changes that have been crucial to them.
I'm saying they go
They
3 and
jump way
4.
ahead. Stage 4, Washington Justice and Florida Mayhem, top half of the league.
I think
Yeah,
you're
because
stretching.
by that
I think
point,
half
they're
of that
all
was
there.
correct.
Like last season.
I think half of
Back
that
down
was
for a
correct.
second.
It's a hot take for a reason. It's a hot
Can you
take.
look at the numbers? I don't think it works like that. That's not how math works, right?
not overall, but for the stage. For stage 4, top half of stage
okay,
4
okay.
standings.
Got it.
Is that
You know,
before
when
or
all the other
after?
teams
Are there
stop
2
caring.
Ednars in this call? What happened?
I'm rubbing off on people. It's glorious.
This is terrible for the podcast.
I want to go back to Los Angeles Gladiators, right? Because that was definitely a season 1 favorite for me as far as just watching them play.
For
When you
certain.
think about the teams now that kind of mix it up and try new things, and someone mentioned cheese, do you think they should have kept heading in that direction? Because
Yes.
as far as their player pool
Yeah.
and as far as that team, they have the most like fucking flex players, right? Like, and flex players that are better across the board on those characters versus what they can pull off that other teams just don't have access to. So I always wondered why they never went further down that path to be the oddball team, because they were so good at it, even though they are performing better than they were at the beginning of the season.
They could absolutely
agree
be
with
kind
that.
of like
Doing,
the
though.
Western
everybody answered
Chengdu.
once.
Like look at Chengdu. They're not great, right? They're fun to watch. They're good. But you also look at evolution of season 2, which is very minimal, right? So if you're practicing these cheese comps, people figure out these cheese comps. People have figured out Chengdu to an extent, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to beat the top half of the league as Chengdu unless it's like a upset, right? But you also have to think like these players also know that maybe 222 is coming, but it didn't. Right? So now if you've been practicing this 222 comp or this 321 comp, whatever you've been practicing, like, sorry, suck. Like, you're going to suck even more now because you haven't been practicing what you should have been practicing. Like, every coach will tell you that 60% of the time, GOATS is necessary.
60% of the time, it works every time.
I will say, if any team is going to make a bunker comp work in Overwatch League, it would probably be the Gladiators. Because, I mean, just how well that they've already played it, having Batiste and just kind of going with the Orisa, Roadhog, that kind of cheese right now with a Bastion. I think if any team's going to make that like a more viable comp, I think it would be them. But yeah, they've been a really big disappointment for me this season. So I'd love to see them try something different and be that team that changes the meta, or at least introduces something that's a little bit different.
Any team that pulls off the King's Road debate should not be forced into GOATs. Like they have so much more potential than just playing 3-3 all the time.
Yeah.
Speaking of
debate.
Dude, I love watching Gladiators on Hanamura, like what they've done with that map alone, as far as what they've done to contenders, because like the stuff they pull off, you see in contenders a bunch, right? Because everybody's trying it, and that's the kind of golden spot for me of what LA Gladiators were, and what Clay and I used to always talk about last season was, oh, you can't believe what they did, and they did it well, and then they did it the next week, and it's just like, and then they give it up, right? But I don't know.
Yeah,
I like what they do on Paris right now.
What about the Contenders Trials or whatever composition that came out with a permanent Torbjorn in May, regardless of attack and defense? Starting in the exact same spots. Goats started in Contenders Trials. It's the new meta. Get on board or get out of the way.
Anytime Torb and May are played, it's amazing.
Let's talk about Valiant. Let's just do it. Come on.
Yeah, so Promise is in chat. Promise is in chat. Coach of the LA Valiant. Wanted a hot take on the LA Valiant. So I want to appease the man.
I want to know if Custa has a bigger brain now or a smaller brain now.
is what I'm seeing stage 3. That schedule is stacked. I think everyone they played made stage playoffs except Guangzhou Charge. Oh, Chengdu as well. But otherwise, their other 5 matches, they all made stage playoffs this past stage.
I think the big thing with the Valiant is because they're going to mainly, Western, teams.
Western and Kariv.
Yeah, it seems that way.
Is Izayaki going to stay on the team?
I think he's easy.
Can you get rid of Izayaki?
Yeah, you can.
If you're going,
Izayaki and Kariv are both very.
When you lose 7 games in a stage, everyone's head is on the guillotine. Okay.
Yeah. Izayaki
unless they're the Outlaws.
Everyone in the Outlaws would be if Flame wasn't there.
I think you'd rather sell Izayaki for like
all of it on his own shoulders.
The thing with Izayaki is that Izayaki is such a good, is such a fragger and gets so many kills, but they look better with Kariv in.
Mm-hmm.
That's just been the thing. They feel more in sync. They feel more coherent when it's Kariv and Custa calling from the support line.
Yeah. Well, Izayaki frags, but he can't actually heal worth a damn. Like, that's the problem. Is he pops his ult to heal himself and no one else.
Okay, but look at this. Like, what is your skill ceiling versus your skill floor, right? Izayaki, I think, has a higher skill ceiling than Kariv does, right?
Does Izayaki have a higher skill ceiling with no Korean coaches? Because they don't have a Korean coach anymore.
Do we know he can't speak English reasonably well in Korea?
I have no idea. Yo, get him on the call. Get him on the call right now.
1-800 Izayaki.
Let's get to the bottom of this.
Counterpoint, Izayaki has a higher skill ceiling, but do you win the team fight with him in?
Yeah. I think they
depends
have
on if the coaching staff's willing to build around him or not.
If it kills 5 people.
That's what I'm saying. Like, so Izayaki has a higher skill ceiling. So do you take him out of your lineup, put him in a lineup that somebody's willing to coach him and make him better in, and then go against him? No.
Well, it's the lineup that fits, right? So, like we talked about, Izayaki pops heads, not heals. So, what he needs...
So, teach him to pop heals.
That's not that easy. I mean, look how far he's made on what he's doing right now.
Though. Like,
it's not.
I disagree. I
trade
think
him
that
for freaking Unco.
But
I'm not saying it's not. I'm not saying it's.
There are team comps that can use him.
Overnight, you just tell him like, "Hey, go ahead." Yeah, there are teams that can use him, and teams that would beat LA for it. So,
well, not necessarily.
I think that's
it's all about
trade.
The kind of strategy they're going for. So if you're like, hey, our goal is to pick people off as fast as possible. We're gonna have no heals, no supports. Briggs gonna be throwing armor packs wherever, but we're gonna get these kills, and that's gonna roll fights for us. Then that's the team he fits in. If it's a team that's trying to fight, longer duration fights and try to play it back and forth and disengage and re-engage, then he doesn't fit there. And that feels like what LA Valiant is trying to do, which he doesn't fit inside of.
Then
so
you
he's
need
good.
to trade
He's
him
great,
for
but
somebody equally as good.
Exactly.
That
fits the team.
Going to fit the team structure. But I think if you just trade him for somebody that's not at his level or can't get to a better level than he is playing right now, then I think you're stupid for getting rid of him. Because
I think he's valuable right now. I think he's valuable.
He's like your trump card trade. You're not getting rid of him unless it's for like a haul. But he's definitely. I mean, if you get an offer, you're always going to look.
If they were willing to trade Fate, they're going to be willing to trade Izayaki.
Exactly.
They're a team that's looking towards the future, but it does have to be a decent offer. They're not going to trade him for whatever. The brilliant hot take would be by the end of stage 3, we're going to be talking about how good Fact Fiction looks. I think he is a really, really strong player.
All right, Houston fan. All
He's
right.
just not as
No,
good
I
as
was I was so hoping he was going to Washington.
Versus
I was so hoping he
Houston.
was going to
I'd
Washington.
rather talk about how good he looked in contenders and things like that. The guy, he also, when he played for Houston, he was never taking Muma's job, right? I do think
No.
Muma's a better main tank. They put him in so that if they needed him, right? Burnout was such a problem. And he acquitted himself well when in his time playing for Houston last season. It's easy to forget how solid of a team they were last year, really, outside of the Tracer meta. They had a pretty solid, really good stage 1, a good stage 4. And their problems were never related to the tank line, even when Fact Fiction was out there, right? Everybody knew what their problem was. They didn't have a Tracer. Fact Fiction's really good. I think Shax has a really good opportunity to pop off, too.
He's going to do so good.
He's got to prove it at this level for me, but he definitely proved it at the last level, so he's earned his shot. And I think the DPS line is where the Valiant really, that like team communications and shot calling, because Custa just, his brain was too big to be able to talk, I guess, in game or whatever. But, other than those problems, I think it's really the DPS play. That's the weakness of their roster. So I think Shax is an addition that comes in the right spot. Also, I don't think there's any reason McGravy should ever see the stage for them, to be perfectly
Not as long as
it's not an issue of McGravy. It's like, have you seen Space, by the way?
Yeah.
Right, that's the thing. I think Space is their MVP.
Yeah.
100%.
The only dumb don't do it reason to put McGravy in would be to play Sombra or some other offensive character over Space. But at that point, you have Space. Why wouldn't you just keep Space in?
Yeah. Space is a player that you build a team around. So, yeah.
100%.
As someone who really wants Washington to do well, I was hoping McGravy would go there to kind of help their Western building team that they're going for. But, yeah, I feel like there's no reason logically that you would ever pull Space out of the Valiant roster.
I don't know
that they're going Western. I don't know that they're going Western. I think they just were willing to part with Fate. And
I agree to that.
What the trade partner they found for Fate had was, I don't know, McGravy officially signed, and then 2 people not under contract that for some reason they were allowed to trade to the LA Valiant. I'll never understand that one.
Just to be clear, I meant Washington's going more Western, so I wanted McGravy to go to Washington. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know, though.
Washington just added Arc, though, didn't
Arc.
Yeah.
Well, I mean English
And
speaking,
Sleepy.
like because they had a bunch of Korean players.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Because Arc's
I
English
think
is quite
Arc-
good.
It's
How-
wonderful.
how
But I
the
think
Valiant
Arc is
can-
the transition between the Korean and the English speakers. And I think he does that very well.
Mhm.
And I also think Arc is just an amazing person that I would love to hug.
Well, and if anybody's going to get good play out of Janice, it will be his best friend, Arc.
Yeah.
But other than that.
I don't even
But
know
that's
if
still a very
possible.
difficult task.
Oh, I agree. But the best candidate would be Arc.
I don't
How
know
would you
how
like
the
to I want you to go into comp and play main tank with 5 other people that don't speak your language. And I want you to tell me how you do.
Yeah.
Jonas would look better if he had a competent flex.
I do that every
flex tank
time I
supporting
queue
him.
with you plat players, Mel.
I'm sorry.
I don't know how the Valiant actually didn't acquire Sleepy. That was like the obvious move in my head. Is if they were going towards a more Western roster, you get rid of Izayaki and you get Sleepy.
I'm
I
sorry.
don't think he's good
Sleepy's
enough for
head
that
is
roster.
Too big.
I think Kareev and Izayaki are better than Sleepy.
Custa's
But-
brain
but
would
at least
fit
equal
into
to.
Sleepy's
If
big
you're going
head,
towards a
and then
more
we could have an
Western roster-
epic big head.
I mean,
Kareev seems like he has pretty good English. I don't think.
here's the thing, though. If
He
they
does.
really are going for a giant head, they need to hire me.
I'm just saying, like
Your cranium is
Sleepy's
quite large, yes.
Sleepy's so cocky, and
Ed
Custa's so smart that like you can't have both of them together.
I mean, you're basically describing me.
Sleepy gets a bad rap, though. I mean, we all saw. him,
Listen,
like,
I
just
have
threw him
met
under the bus,
Sleepy
but-
numerous times, and
We don't know that
You're
Sleepy got a bad rap. We don't know that Sleepy got a bad rap.
And honestly,
Sleepy
guys are missing the
puts out a
important thing.
character.
They're not
Here.
going to look at Ed, Mr. 5K DPI over here.
Hey,
I don't know, Ed.
shut up.
I just thought that
Good
was
one.
common knowledge.
Ed, are you sure you want to get hired by the Valiant just so you could switch to another team halfway through the season?
It is possible. But the thing
And
is,
then again,
whatever
and
team I
again,
switch
again.
to, still better than the Outlaws.
So I feel like there's 2 themes.
Oh,
that
that
we're
team
talking
that you
about
switched
as
off
far
of?
as as far as trades and why didn't they grab this person, And there's two questions I've always had is like, how do you guys feel about the volatility of how often and how quickly people are traded and benched and so on and so forth? And then the rumor or what I've heard about how much players are or how much teams are trying to get for people where they're not reasonable, where it feels like everybody's trying to get the maximum, so no one's trading. And then on top of that, it's like, okay, well, you get traded and then you get benched, or somebody comes up from contenders. Like there's not really many sports where you have a volatility of like, oh, this guy came in, he didn't do well, and he was gone in like 2 weeks, right?
Because we don't have a draft.
Florida Mayhem.
To be honest, like there's no reason to trade when all of the upcoming good talent is right beneath you, right?
Yeah.
So like, why not look below than pay an overpriced price for somebody who's already good in the league right now? When it's an esport and you know the longevity is shorter, I think, than it is in traditional sports sometimes. Now, looking at like, what's the benefit of losing right now? Nothing. Right? It's not like you get the pick in the draft. Like, that'd be nice. Houston would get the first pick in the draft right now, and cool. We could have a tracer player. No, we already got one of those. We could have something else. A coaching staff. Can we pick coaches in drafts?
Can we draft coaches?
I'm surprised.
But I think that's the biggest issue.
I'm surprised Houston didn't pick up Sleepy solely for that boy band brotherhood aesthetic that they're going for.
Not blonde enough.
Yeah.
Well, if the rumors of him are true, though, he doesn't fit the brotherhood aspect of that. I mean, he's got the boy band look down.
Hey, any boy that'll buy ice cream for his entire team and then screw up a handshake with Mika Burton, he doesn't seem like a horrible person.
Listen, he reluctantly bought ice cream.
The most horrible of people don't.
Would you spend $100 on ice cream?
He bought Cold Stone, the most expensive ice cream, too.
On ice cream.
Isn't that like that cold rolled ice cream? Isn't that like $40 a pop or something like that?
He bought expensive ice cream and got it delivered for an entire full Overwatch League team roster.
Well, that's just lazy. Go pick it up yourself.
I mean, I'm not going to give him a Nobel Peace Prize for buying 8 people ice cream.
I will.
Right?
I will.
Like, come
Even
on.
expensive ice cream. What are we talking about? Did he spend $50? I don't want to.
He spent $100 on ice cream.
Oh my god, $100.
I don't even have $100 in my bank account.
What if he spends $100?
He says about sleeping.
What if it was
You're not wrong.
like 50 people he got ice cream for, and that's $2 per person for ice cream?
Wait, what kind of ice cream was
consider
it?
him a cheap bastard.
It was Cold Stone.
No,
like,
Cold Stone, but like we got flavors? Like what
Take him to KBBQ.
Yeah, like what if I wanted
everybody get
sprinkles?
vanilla?
Like what if his teammates are like, I want sprinkles and a cherry and some whipped cream, and that shit's like $9.95.
I'll be convinced that Sleepy is a bad person when I find out that his entire roster is lactose intolerant. But until then,
I was not saying that Sleepy is a bad person. I'm saying Sleepy
I believe
is a
those were
cocky
your
person.
exact words.
okay.
I think Sinatra's a cocky person as well. I think there's a lot of cocky people in the league.
Super
it doesn't make them
Dogman.
bad people.
You
I
can
love how
Dogman's
Julian's
funny.
like, hold up.
Dogman's like,
there's like
Dogman's like a
the other
funny
panel.
cocky.
I'm
Sleepy's
holding
like
on to the thing up here.
I'm way too better than you, cocky.
Well,
don't know.
he's had that attitude for a long time. You can look at like the Shocks, like Meet the Player videos from last year, and he definitely had that. But you definitely earn a lot more positive press when Bare Hands throws you under the bus and accuses you of leaking scrim VODs. I think
Everybody's standing him, takes to Twitter really bad, and then everybody's like, "Oh, well, look, all these people rushing to defend him." Like, we'll never know. We'll never know if he's a good teammate.
100%. I agree that like he should have gone into the World Cup roster over Raucus, but it's a separate argument. I do think going with the
They
trades.
probably should have sat Sinatra during World Cup too, but
They probably should have
That's
started
your and
this
Bob's
couple.
opinion.
sorry, salty Sinatra can.
I will say with trades though, I think something that doesn't get considered a lot is just the regions as far as who is directly available because of visa issues, because of just who you can actually reasonably get. I know we're hearing with Florida bringing in all these Korean players, but how quickly do we actually think they're going to get these players?
It's kind of what happened to Houston with Arhan. Even when they finally signed him, it still took like a stage before he even showed up.
And then another 2 stages for him to play.
It's 100% of the reason why Baby Bay is the starting player for Atlanta. And I love Baby Bay. I love him to death. But we always thought they were going to get some European hit scan. They're going to get another guy, but with Baby already in the area, it makes way more sense to pick him up than pick somebody else up and wait for a stage and a half to finally get them so they can play for 3 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, we're a baby league, right? We're like infants right now. So like these things are going to change and they're going to evolve. And right now, visas are very hard to come by for players because it's not a quote unquote credible thing right now, right? Like we just need to give it time and these things will evolve. Eventually, I do think we'll get a draft. Eventually, I do think we'll have better, player unions and then more player cohesion, right? Like the problem is that I don't think the trades they're proposing are so outrageous, but they're so outrageous because of the pool of people that are available to choose from in the contenders and undersea.
Yeah.
All right, so I know we are starting to run on, so let's quickly open things up to answer some of the community questions. So if anyone has any questions about the players, teams, even about podcasting or otherwise, go ahead and post them in the respective Twitch chats. I know we also had a couple of questions that were posted over on Twitter as well.
Why is Reaper not the defective, like the automatic audio format that people use to record Overwatch in?
I'm sorry, what?
Like the audio format of Reaper, like the audio software. I was always joking, like that should be like what everybody uses. It's a dumb joke, but
I'm not my brain is not wrinkly enough to get that joke.
I'm going to explain how the Q&A portion works when you're on a panel, okay? We supply VAs, right? They're going to read us the cues. They're going to come from somewhere else, and then we're going to answer them. It's complicated, I know, but we'll get
Mind blown.
So we do have a question from Banky Hunter over on our Twitter. Some of these we actually already addressed earlier when we were talking about the 3-3 discussion. But basically, he had a third question here, and that's, do you guys feel like the game can survive major changes if they're only come in once in a year? So this is bringing it back to our 3-3 talk earlier. Like, are we expecting, like, huge viewership drops? Can the league survive if we only have one set meta throughout the entirety of the season?
I think so.
Yes.
Because I think you can kind of, even if that is the case, I think you could kind of see each season as kind of a pocket in time for the game, because I think people will look back to season 1 and kind of just be like, that was the dive season. They'll look at this one and be like, that was the goat season. Next season it'll be the somehow managed to play 6 Torbs all season. But like,
year of the Torb.
But yeah,
I
think that having each season kind of be its own meta, I think people can survive one season of a meta, especially like I wasn't very high on the 3-3 meta in early stage 1, but then we saw the stage 1 playoffs and I saw actual good 3-3 teams face other actual good 3-3 teams and realized that it can be enjoyable to watch. So I think people can survive one season on one meta.
It can survive. I think the better question is it the best? And it's kind of the question we tried to answer before. Is it the best form of Overwatch League? Is it what makes us grow the fastest? And that's kind of up for everybody to have their own individual opinion on. And I think we've already kind of heard mine on it. So
Spider is asking, is Rob giving out Japanese candy?
Is it BlizzCon? Are we at BlizzCon? If we're at BlizzCon, he's definitely giving out Japanese candy, yes.
And the security guard is going to steal them from me because apparently you can't take candy in.
It's garbage.
Please, Blizzard, please.
Should have tried bribing him with Japanese candy.
Yeah, to the statement of can it survive? Yeah, I think it can survive. It's one of those things where with 3-3, it's funny, like watching when it started and at watch parties, people not really knowing what's going on and getting used to it versus I'm going to go to, the first time we beat New York, where on that first control map, a lot of people were responding to like disengages and re-engages and bubbles and like getting hype based on seeing that stuff, which meant, okay, they're learning what's important and what's to get hype about. As far as it lasting, I mean, one thing you see that's common is a lot of people say, oh, I'm not playing Overwatch anymore. And even me, I'm not playing as much as I used to because, Magic the Gathering arena. But anyways, I'm not playing as much as I used to, but I'm still watching as much as I do, right? And that's what's happening is people that are not playing are still watching. So when you have new players coming in or new watchers coming in, not even players, people who are catching on ESPN, ABC, so on and so forth, Disney XD, that's growth. So I don't know if it's if it's going to be the facilitator, is the comp is going to facilitate the growth, but there's growth coming from different aspects, which may be where their focus is as far as the partnerships, the viewing aspects, how they're promoting it, the deals they're coming in with. Like that's all part of the business that is growing the viewership.
Yeah.
So yeah, it can survive. There's different ways to do it.
And quite often, at least for me, when I play Overwatch, it makes me want to watch Overwatch League. And when I watch Overwatch League, it makes me want to play Overwatch. For different reasons. Watching Overwatch League makes me want to go, oh, I can do that. And then I play Overwatch League and everyone's horrible. And I go, man, I want to watch actual good people play. But like,
Right.
I think,
This very false sense of like you can do things when you watch it.
yeah, but like, it's kind of, having both exist helps the other, no matter what the meta really is. And I think earlier I was saying that it can survive one season, each season kind of being a pocket in time. But I think I was mainly saying we can survive this season in GOATs, but if 2-2-2 is implemented, I think seasons won't just be pockets in time like I was saying, because the meta will change within 2-2-2, and it'll kind of just be, it won't have to be pockets in time because it'll be always changing.
All right, well, we do have quite a few more questions in chat. So from Sporks, GG, he says, who feeds the most in the OWL and why is it Bumper? Okay, so is it really feed-in if the teams are just punishing everyone else on that team now?
Well,
I feel
they're
like you're a little biased there, Totem.
they're
Yeah.
it's feeding because
If
like they're
360
punishing the
or
rest of the team
shatters,
because he's bumpy. He's bumper.
He's able to feed.
Like
That's
he's
the difference.
feeding, and they're like,
Maybe
okay,
they practice it.
so he's feeding. We're gonna
Practice
kill the rest
feeding?
of the team.
Yeah, practice feed.
None of them feed. Feeding is intentional. What Bumper does is artful throwing. Okay, when you see him sail majestically off the back of Volskaya Industries in stage 1, you know that's artful. It's deliberate. No, I mean it's a matter of just aggression and it being punished, right? And the team being able to react to it. So, who feeds the hardest or who throws the hardest is. Look at the bottom of the stage standings every year, and that's honestly where it'll be.
If Bumper didn't play the way he played, do you think it would be the same turnout for Titans? Like if they had a tank that was completely opposite. Like think of a Fusions who's like more defensive and known for his play.
Well-
if they had Fusions, would they be the same team? Like a
I think you
Fusions
have to
play
play
style, not
around.
Fusions.
I think you have to
No.
play around the tank, though, right? Like they knew going into it, they had played with Bumper, so that's where their play style has developed, right? Runaway developed their play style from Bumper's play style of being like, "I'm gonna get a cheeky shatter," right? Like, and him giggling behind the
Cheeky
corner,
shatter.
right? Like, I mean, it's just so funny, right? I see him and I'm like, who does this? But then you see teams like walk around the corner and like look everywhere, right? They waste time because they're looking for Bumper because he's going to be in a stupid spot to shatter him, or he charges right through a freaking team where he should die. But guess what happens? He doesn't die. He shatters everybody, and then everybody else dies. So like, it's a team strategy that
Bumper's a
nobody else
genius.
does.
There's 19 teams in Overwatch League that Bumper would be considered one of the worst tanks in Overwatch League if he
Yes.
played for. And then there's one team where he would be considered one of the best tanks in Overwatch League if he played for. We heard that he tried for other teams. They passed because they didn't like his style. They didn't want to play that style. Vancouver's very okay playing that style. They play into it. You can do that with a lot of players. It's what New York does with Jonak and things like that. It's the same thing. It's just a different position. So
I don't agree with the narrative that like Bumper's actually a feeder and is bad. Like their whole team messes around when they're playing like worse competition. But if you go back and watch like San Francisco Shock versus Bumper is doing all the right things when he needs to and being extremely clutch. Like he's an extremely good playing tank player. He'll have fun when he can, but he's always doing good. And even if he's charging someone off the map, it's usually in a losing fight if it's like a game against San Francisco Shock, and he's usually got Sinatra in his arm resetting his energy. The dude is a genius. He's really good. I think we give him too much crap because he does sometimes have a little too much fun with it. But I think if you trade him to another team, he's just as good. I would say
only
the
if the
biggest
team
feeder
plays
is
into
Sue.
him the same.
I don't think he's just as good, but I do still think that he's very good because I feel like even though he's not dependent on the Vancouver roster, I think he thrives in that roster.
He does, for sure.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
And it's
All right,
exciting
so
to watch.
I'm,
Wouldn't be as good on a different team.
right. I'm a little too biased and I'm letting this run on too long. Isam Jello is asking who's trying to go to Philly for the finals. Anyone got plans to go to the finals?
I don't have the money.
We're gonna try.
I'll be there.
This guy right here.
Listen, I was supposed to be there, but now I'm gonna be in Sweden.
I was
for a
at
couple
Barclays
weeks,
last
so-
year
Yeah.
to make it tradition. We going.
We don't want to talk about Barclay. Nope.
Last
move
year
on.
we hosted kind of like a joint podcasters meetup or whatever in New York. We haven't talked to every single podcast about it, so some of the guys in the panel haven't heard about it yet. But no, you're all invited when you start hearing talk about it. We're probably going to combine forces and fan bases and find a place for all the podcasters to do one big meetup like we did last year.
Sick.
It was a whole lot of fun. Had a really good turnout, and I think Philly will be more conducive to more people showing up than New York was in the middle of a rainstorm outside on a patio. No kidding.
Well, you can tailgate in Philly.
Well,
That's the most important part of it all.
This will be the day before, Ed. This will be the day before.
I don't care, but you can tailgate before. Like, that's the best thing about this in Philly is you can tailgate before the matchup in the parking lot. And if you live anywhere in the Midwest, you know that tailgating is life.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm a
You get
Cleveland
there
fan, so we know
4
that
hours.
very, very well.
Yeah, you get there 4 hours before the game.
Chiefs.
You start drinking 8 hours before the game. I'm not saying you should drink and drive.
That's why you drink in the parking lot.
Yeah, you drink in the parking lot at 7 a.m.
If we're
before
talking,
you
if
get
we're
your
talking
teeth
about
kicked
on a
in.
was a
tailgate
thing.
here, I'm from Buffalo, so you jump off of an RV through a table that you set on fire before you hit the ground, and then after you hit the ground, everybody just throws ketchup and mustard all over you. That's how we tailgate in Buffalo. We
You
do
are
it the
talking
best.
to a fan of a guy who goes to a game where our mascot is called Brewer. It's named after beer.
Ed, Totem's trying to move on.
No, that's not allowed to work with me.
Well, we don't want to starve Rob, so Ed, I know you had one question.
I
so
do.
Let's do this
Oh,
quick, and then
gosh.
we're gonna wrap it up.
So, why does Donald Duck wear a towel when he comes out of the shower when he doesn't wear pants?
All right, well, I had fun, guys.
All the
I don't know about you guys, but I had a great time. It was a phenomenal.
It's an honest question.
Well, you can go to your I don't know, Disney podcast.
Why do you wear a towel? I'm
Well,
just asking.
it's because of
There's nothing
gravity.
To cover up. Why
And
would
keep
you
it
wear
with all the other relevant
If you have
topics and
long
more at
hair-
competitive Overwatch's subreddit.
The bottom of your hair is going to be the wettest, the longest.
But he
You
wears
need
it
to dry
around
it
his
extra.
waist.
Exactly. So all the water has gone from his shoulders and his neck down to his waist. So he's dried everywhere else.
Look at how
It's all
simple, like,
That is a
it's
good
all
answer.
Arrived at the bottom, so he needs to wrap it up.
That is a
His
good
behavior.
answer.
Just ignore it. Act
Hey,
like it didn't
hey.
happen.
At least I didn't bring up MCU taking it anally or.
Totem, I think we are ready to close it out here.
Totem, if you right click on Ednar's picture, there's like a mute button. You can get this
I
thing
just-
over with real quick.
I should just do that on all the podcasts. But anyways,
Fair.
I know it is getting fairly late, and
Fairly.
all of us are in different time zones. So with that being said,
Yeah.
I do want to thank my panelists Ryan, Adam, HOWLEIR, EDANAR, DEATHBLOW, Rob, Kel, Melarina, and Ramses for joining me tonight. And I do want to give a special shout out to everyone that's been hanging out with us live tonight on Twitch. We've had, pretty good viewership across the night, so I greatly appreciate everyone coming in to support the podcast scene. And just as a reminder, we are doing a second panel with different panelists, and that will be next Sunday night. That is Sunday, May 26th. We'll start at 7:30 p.m. Pacific time.
I challenge you
Maybe?
to go as long
Maybe?
as we did without Ed.
But just a little background info on who all is on that panel. We'll have the Blevins from High Noon moderating that panel, and he'll be joined by Calder from the Broverwatch, Andres from OMNIC Lab, Hannah and LP from the OMNIC Weekly, Misfit from Overtakes, Spider from Overwatch League Network, Blaze and Bob from Overwatch League Recap, and I think Panda's going to be the one representing Mayhem Maniacs. I don't have 100% confirmation on that, but Mayhem Maniacs is going to be involved. We do have Labosco from Push the Point. So with that being said, we hope everyone comes back next Sunday for our next panel, and this is something we're going to do at the end of each stage. And we went from, I think it was 8 people last time to having 20 people for 2 panels this time, so...
I was out of town.
And next time, everyone's going to be like, don't put me on the same panel as Ed. I
I'm
don't
sure.
have 3 hours.
He goes on the B team panel. The second
Yeah.
one. He goes on the B team panel.
Wait, so are you calling everyone who's doing the next one the B team?
Yeah, we're all
No,
the A
it's
team.
No, it's because you have Blevins.
There'll be
and
3
Bob, and
panels.
the
There'll be like
boss,
one
so
with
it's 3
po-
Ps.
there'll be one with Ednar and then 2 with podcasters.
Okay, I get a solo podcast. That shit will still be 3 hours.
It'll never
end.
We don't have to suffer through it.
Yeah, everyone else can deal with it. So with that being said, thank you again, everyone. Has a good night, and we'll see you back next Sunday night for our second panel. Take care.
Later, guys.
Nice.